He had promised to marry her when they grew up, to have a whole bunch of kids and play tag until the sun went down. But now, the little boy who used to follow her around like a shadow, calling her his wife, was he really gone? Vivien felt a familiar sting behind her eyes as tears began to fall, unbidden. Her assistant watched, her heart aching for her. "Miss, please don't," she started, but the words caught in her throat. Vivien didn't speak. She just lowered her gaze, wiped the corner of her eye with a fingertip, and walked forward. "Let's go see." She wasn't sure if the old director would even be here anymore. But when she reached the gate of the old children's home, she found it chained and padlocked. Peering through the wrought iron, she saw an empty courtyard. The warm sounds of laughter and life were gone, replaced by a scene of neglect and decay. A fresh wave of pain clenched Vivien's heart. Had only been 5 years? Could the director and the others really have left already? She sighed a small, pain sound. "Open the gate." "Yes, miss." The assistant nodded, giving a subtle signal to one of the bodyguards. The old, rusted lock gave way with a sharp crack. Vivien pushed the gate open and stepped inside. The layout was exactly as she remembered it from 5 years ago, frozen in time, but the people who had filled it with life were gone. The emptiness was a suffocating weight. She walked deeper into the courtyard, silent. Her assistant moved to follow with an umbrella, but Vivien stopped her. "Wait here, all of you. I'm going alone." Ignoring their protests, she walked on, letting the cold rain plaster her hair to her face. Standing in the middle of the yard, she felt like she had traveled back 5 years. For a moment, she could almost hear the ghosts of their laughter. But when she opened her eyes, there was nothing but the rain and an old stone table. And on that table, something familiar glinted. Vivien reached out and picked it up. As her fingers closed around the cool metal, 1,000 tiny needles pierced her heart. "Jason," she whispered, her lips trembling. The name was a choked sob, her tears mingling with the rain that streamed down her face. The object on the table was the locket she had given him for his birthday years ago. Inside was a picture of her, taken 5 years back. The girl in the photo had smiling eyes that curved like crescent moons. She was holding a bouquet of flowers, radiating a sweet, innocent joy. The edges of the photo were worn and faded, clear evidence of being held and looked at 1,000 times. But now, one corner of the picture had been torn away. Deliberately, violently. Clara had torn it. Clenching the cold locket in her hand, Vivien finally broke down, her cries lost in the downpour. Before coming back to New York, she had clung to a desperate hope. That maybe Jason was just trying to provoke her into returning, that his marriage to Clara was purely contractual, devoid of feeling. Or maybe he'd just made a foolish mistake. But seeing this locket, her heart died. She remembered the day she gave it to him. He had sworn that as long as he loved her, he would never, ever lose it. He would keep it close to his heart, taking it out whenever he missed her so he would never forget her face. Even if he died, it would be with him. And now here it was, abandoned on a stone table. A final, silent declaration that their story was over. That he would never love her again. A suffocating numbness washed over Vivien. Her vision blurred, and the world tilted as she swayed on her feet. "Miss," her assistant, who had been watching from a distance, rushed forward and caught her just as she was about to collapse. "Miss, you can't do this. No matter how much it hurts, you have to hold on. You have to get revenge for Jason." The assistant had been assigned to Vivien ever since she arrived in Switzerland, and she knew her story well. Vivien's eyes fluttered open, a flicker of clarity returning. "Yes, I have to get revenge." But the pain in her heart was a physical, unbearable thing. In her 5 years abroad, living as an outsider under the thumb of the Sioux family, she hadn't cried when they'd drawn her blood until she fainted. She hadn't cried when they'd forced her to endure their brutal discipline, leaving her back a mess of welts and bruises. But now, all the humiliation and agony she had suppressed for so long came rushing to the surface, demanding release. For all those years, Jason had been her only reason to keep going. She had thought that if she went with the Sioux family, they would leave him alone, that he would be safe. She had been so naive about human nature. Julian Sioux. He has to die. Vivien's jaw clenched, her nails digging into her palms until she drew blood. Her gaze drifted past the orphanage grounds to a small bakery a few hundred yards down the road. A familiar memory surfaced, and fresh tears welled in her eyes. "I want a blueberry muffin." Her mouth was bitter, the result of not having eaten all day. Maybe the sweet, familiar taste could chase away some of the bitterness. "Oh, I'll go get you one right now," the assistant said, relieved. But Vivien was already moving. "No," she said, stepping into the muddy street. "I want to buy it myself." She walked to the bakery. It was just as busy as she remembered. 2 customers were standing at the counter. One of them was a tall man, his broad shoulders filling out a well-tailored suit. Vivien, lost in her grief, barely registered him. "1 blueberry muffin, please," she said softly, her voice catching. The tall figure in front of her froze. Jason's pupils constricted. He thought he was imagining it. That sounded just like Vivien's voice. His feet felt like they were encased in lead. That voice, soft and gentle, like a spring breeze brushing against his heart. He had heard it in his dreams 1,000 times. He couldn't be mistaken. But how could she be here? She was supposed to be in Switzerland. She was part of the prestigious Sue family now, a pampered heiress. He didn't dare believe it, but then another voice confirmed his fears. "Miss, you really don't have to do this yourself. We can buy it for you," the assistant pleaded, draping a dry coat over Vivien's shoulders. Vivien shook her head. "It's fine. I'm already soaked. Besides, it's been a long time since I walked down this road." Her quiet words made Jason's heart leap into his throat. It was really her. She was back. But weren't the Zus forbidding her from returning? How'd she get here? Jason stood paralyzed, his body numb. He had thought that after 5 years, his feelings for Vivien had finally faded. But now, just hearing her voice sent his heart hammering against his ribs, his chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. He was so frozen he couldn't even turn around to see if it was really her. Had he really moved on? 8 years of history, a childhood spent side by side. Could that be erased so easily? Jason forced himself to take a slow, steadying breath, trying to calm the frantic beating of his heart. Get it together. Calm down. If he revealed his identity now, everything he had worked for, all the risks he'd taken with Clara and Brooke, would be for nothing. He had just barely escaped those 2 she-devils. Besides, he and Vivien were over. 5 years ago, she had told him herself. She wanted the money and power the Sue family could offer, things he could never provide. They were done. A faint redness colored his eyes as he finally got his pulse under control. But he still didn't turn around. He didn't want to see her, and he certainly didn't want her to recognize him. If she had decided 5 years ago that they were finished, he wasn't about to go crawling back. They were strangers now. Just then, the bakery owner finished bagging his order. "Here you go, son. 50 blueberry muffins. Sorry for the wait. We had to bake a fresh batch for an order this big." The owner, a kindly man, tossed 2 extra muffins into the bag. "On the house. Come back soon." "Thanks," Jason grunted. He tossed a few $100 bills on the counter, grabbed the bag, and turned to leave. Hey, your change," the owner called out, thinking he'd forgotten. He was an honest man and hurried after him. Forced to stop, Jason watched impatiently as the owner counted out the bills. The entire exchange was unfolding right in front of Vivien. She frowned, studying the man whose build and height were so different from Jason's, yet still felt naggingly familiar. But his back was to her, so she couldn't even see his eyes. All she could do was watch, a seed of doubt planted in her mind. As soon as the owner handed him the change, Jason spun around and hurried toward his car, a cold sweat breaking out on his back. He felt Vivien's eyes on him the whole time. Another second, and she would have figured it out. Thank God the owner was quick. He let out a breath of relief, tossed the bag of muffins onto the back seat, and straightened up to get in the driver's side. When he looked up, his blood ran cold. Vivien was standing directly in front of him, her gaze locked on his face. Jason froze. Thump! The bag of muffins he was still holding slipped from his grasp and fell to the ground. 5 years. The girl whose features had still held a trace of childishness had blossomed into a stunning young woman, even more beautiful than he had imagined. She wore a simple white dress embroidered with daisies, the hem fluttering in the breeze. Her figure was slender and graceful, her dark hair falling to her chest. Her skin was like porcelain, and damp strands of hair framed her face, giving her a look of heartbreaking vulnerability. Her lovely, almond-shaped eyes were as clear and gentle as he remembered, beautiful enough to steal a man's soul with a single glance. Unlike Brooke and Clara, Vivien's beauty had no sharp edges. It was soft and yielding like a warm spring wind, a pure, gentle beauty that made you want to protect her. Jason's hands tightened into fists. For a split second, his heart stopped, just like it had when he was 5 years old and saw her for the first time. He had once believed that time could erase anything. Now he knew better. The person who makes your heart stop at first sight will make it stop every time you see them again. But they were nothing to each other now. "Excuse me, miss. I need to leave," he said, his voice a low rasp. He bent down to pick up the muffins, his expression cold. A delicate white hand reached past him and picked them up first. Jason looked up at Vivien, a questioning frown on his face. "Jason, is it you?" she asked, her own eyes red and brimming with tears. She stared at him, her voice a soft, reverent whisper, as if speaking his name too loudly might shatter the moment. Jason's heart lurched, but his expression remained a cold mask. "I don't know what you're talking about, miss. If you don't mind, please give me back my things. My daughter is waiting for me to come home and make her dinner." He kept his head down, the lie delivered in the detached tone of a stranger. Vivien stared at his mask, refusing to believe it. A moment ago, seeing only his back, she hadn't been sure. But now, seeing his eyes, she knew. She was absolutely certain. 5 years had passed, and she didn't even know what he looked like now, but she would never mistake the feeling he gave her. Why was he hiding from her? Why wouldn't he acknowledge her? His cold words were like a knife twisting in her heart. "Jason, are you still mad at me?" A tear traced a path down her cheek. Soaked and disheveled, she stood before him like a lost child, terrified of being abandoned all over again. Jason paused. The Vivien of 5 years ago would have broken his heart, but 5 years ago, she was the one who said he wasn't good enough for her. Why should he feel sorry for her now? On what grounds? "You mistaken, miss. Whoever you wronged, you should go apologize to them." "I don't know you," he said, his tone even colder as he turned to leave. "Jason, don't go," Vivien cried, grabbing for him. "I don't believe you're not him. Please, just let me explain." Her shouting attracted the attention of a few other customers. Jason, who had been tempted to stop and listen for a moment, knew he couldn't stay. Clara and Brooke were probably watching his every move in the city. He couldn't afford to draw attention to himself. His frown deepened. "Miss, I don't know anyone named Jason. If you don't let go, I'm calling the police." "You?" Vivien flinched, hurt by his detached threat. But she wouldn't give up. "If you're not Jason, why are you hiding behind a mask? If you're really not him, then take it off. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize." Her eyes, red and desperate, bored into his mask as she pressed him. She trusted her instincts. She couldn't be wrong. Jason gritted his teeth. "This is ridiculous." He tried to walk away again. Finally, Vivien snapped. "You're not leaving." Her hand shot out and grabbed the knot of the mask cord. With a soft snap, the mask fell away. But the face that appeared before Vivien was that of a complete stranger. Half of the man's face was covered in a horrifying, puckered burn scar. Though he had the same single-lidded eyes as Jason, his were slightly more downturned, his nose a higher bridge. Even the shape of his face was different. Vivien froze, utterly stunned. It wasn't him. It really wasn't him. But his eyes. They were so similar. 5 years had passed. The boy she knew was gone, and she had only seen recent pictures of the man Jason had become. All she truly remembered were his eyes. But the man standing before her, whose eyes were a near-perfect match, was not him. "Miss, I told you I couldn't take it off. My face. I was in an accident." "This is incredibly disrespectful," Jason said, letting out a massive internal sigh of relief as he watched the confusion on Vivien's face. Thank God he had been prepared. The SFX wax he'd bought at a costume shop, molded into a convincing burn scar, had served its purpose. He'd created it as an excuse for wearing the mask every day. He just never expected to run into Vivien here. "I'm so sorry. I was mistaken," Vivien murmured, staring at his face. Amid the murmurs of the small crowd that had gathered, she let her hand fall, numbly holding out the mask to him. Had she just imagined it? Or was the shock of losing Jason so profound that she was now seeing him in every stranger? The thought was a fresh stab of pain. "Keep it," Jason said coldly, snatching the mask from her hand. "Just try not to accost strangers on the street in the future." He turned without another word and got into his car. The engine roared to life. As he drove away, Vivien's gaze followed the car until it was out of sight. Only then, once he was sure she couldn't see him, did Jason finally allow his tense shoulders to relax. After a moment's thought, he changed direction and drove toward the orphanage's new location. Vivien remained rooted to the spot, staring after him for a long time. Finally, her assistant stepped forward and draped the coat over her again. "Miss, I think you're just overwhelming yourself." All day, she had insisted that Jason wasn't really dead. But the Sterling family had been clear. The body was in the coffin, buried. They'd even done a DNA test. It seemed her boss was so lost in her grief that she was seeing ghosts everywhere. The thought had even occurred to Vivien herself. Maybe she was starting to hallucinate. The assistant's heart went out to her. "Miss, we just got a message from the Sterlings." "What is it?" Vivien asked, finally pulling herself back to the present. "It's about Mr. G. He's holding a press conference and will be inviting several people, including Evan Sterling and Mr. Julian Sue." Vivien's eyes narrowed. "Oh, what a coincidence. So this Mr. G wanted to partner with Julian? This was perfect. A golden opportunity to lure Julian back to New York. Once he was on her turf, everything would be much simpler. Tell Clara to make the arrangements. I'll cooperate. As long as I can kill Julian's Sue, I'll do whatever it takes, Vivien said, her voice laced with venom. Yes, miss. The assistant immediately relayed the message. At that same moment, Clara Sterling was lying on an examination table. The doctor's cold ultrasound wand glided over her stomach, checking on the health of the babies inside. A warmth spread through her chest. Through the monitor, she could see the two tiny, nascent forms, and her eyes filled with tears. These were her and Jason's children. Their babies were already this big, but their father would never get to see them grow up. Clara, dear, don't cry, the matriarch said gently, dabbing at her tears. Jason is watching from heaven. He would be so happy. Clara nodded, her eyes still red. Ava slipped into the room. Ma'am, Vivien has agreed. She conveyed the rest with a meaningful look. Good. You handle the arrangements, Clara said. And remember, no one outside this room is to know about my pregnancy until the day these babies are born. The Sterling family was full of vultures. She wasn't afraid, but she didn't need any more complications. Ava and the matriarch nodded in agreement. Jason parked his car and walked into the new orphanage. Brother. Nana and a swarm of other kids mobbed him as soon as they saw him. But Jason's face was grim. He shot a dark look at Sprite and jerked his head toward the office. In my office. Now. His voice was tight with anger. Sprite's expression flickered. She knew what this was about. She followed him into the office, her guilt palpable. Jason, what's up? She asked tentatively, watching him stand with his back to her. She had a sinking feeling this was about Vivien. Her suspicion was confirmed a second later when Jason spun around, slapping his mask down on the desk. You know damn well why I called you in here. Vivien's back in the country. Why didn't you tell me? He had specifically tasked Sprite with monitoring the airports. The moment Vivien set foot in New York, she was supposed to notify him. He had no intention of getting back together with her, but her return would inevitably complicate his plans. Sprite knew that, yet she hadn't said a word. If he hadn't been prepared today, his whole faked death, which had taken weeks to orchestrate, would have been blown. Jason, you saw Vivien? Sprite's head was down, but she snapped it up a moment later. Did she recognize you? No. Jason snapped, her reaction confirming his suspicions. Why didn't you tell me? The thought made him even angrier. Sprite opened her mouth, a note of defiance in her voice. She abandoned you for the Sue family. She's a traitor. Have you forgotten how hard you worked to get her that spot at Juilliard and what she did to you? Do you actually want to get back together with her? I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to see her. I don't want you to get hurt by her again. Like Jason and Vivien, Sprite had been an orphan. She had arrived at the home 6 years ago, by which point Jason and Vivien already had 7 years of history. She had just been one of the other kids, never particularly close to them. It wasn't until after Vivien left and Jason, now back with the Millers, began secretly funding the home that he discovered Sprite's talent for computers and started training her. Was all their hard work about to be undone because that woman was back? Sprite grew more agitated as she spoke, and a tear, a rare sight, slipped down her cheek. Jason's anger slowly softened. Lucy, that's not what I meant, he said, his voice gentler. When did I ever say I wanted to get back with Vivien? It's not going to happen between us. You can relax. He almost had to laugh at her wild assumptions. Where are you even getting that from? Isn't it true? Sprite shot back, unconvinced. Don't think I don't know. You used to spend all night staring at that locket. And just a few weeks ago, when Clara threw in the trash, you went out in the middle of the night and dug it out. The more she spoke, the angrier she got. Why did he have to be such a simp? Ahem. Jason cleared his throat loudly, cutting her off before she could say more. Just don't go making decisions for me in the future, all right? You have to keep me in the loop. If I hadn't been prepared today, I would have been exposed. Now, what's the status of the press conference? Have you sent the invites to Evan Sterling and Julian Sue? He steered the conversation away from Vivien. Sprite sniffled and pulled up her laptop. It's all set. As for Evan, even though we drained his accounts, he managed to get Julian Sue to help him scrape together enough cash to bail out his dear old dad. I heard they had a real, tearful reunion at the hospital. Father and son reunited at last. Jason chuckled. His dad, yeah, the one who raised another man's kid. Should we call him the cuckold-in-chief? Maybe the eagle who raised a sparrow? I don't know. Sprite mumbled. Jason laughed, a genuine laugh this time. Her dark humor was infectious. So, the happy family was back together. He wondered how Victor Sterling would react if he knew his wife had been sleeping with a neighbor and passed another man's child off as his own. Good. Make some arrangements, Jason said, a cold smile touching his lips. Victor deserves to know the truth before he kicks the bucket. He gave Sprite a few more instructions before getting in his car and heading back to the old Miller family mansion. He had to take a few back roads to avoid any potential traffic cameras. Driving was such a pain. Maybe he should get a motorcycle. He parked and walked into the mansion. He'd already fired all of Robert Miller's old staff. Now, there was just one housekeeper, a pleasant, efficient woman in her 50s named Mrs. Gable. "Sir, I've left dinner warming for you in the dining room, and there's milk. The water in the master bath is drawn. Please let me know if you need anything else," she said, greeting him at the door. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable." Jason was pleased. After a long day, this was the life he wanted, a life where Clara and Brooke never found him. He walked into the quiet house, feeling a rare sense of peace, completely unaware of the figures watching him from the house next door. As soon as he was inside, they rushed to make their report. Mr. G is home." Brooke Lynn, who had been lying listlessly in bed, shot upright. "Really? Help me up. Give me the outfit I picked out. Hurry." Suddenly, her back didn't ache, her legs felt fine, and even the healing wound on her neck seemed to itch less. Jason was back. She had to see him. "Yes, miss." Her staff scrambled into action. Brooke frantically changed outfits, then ran into the kitchen and clattered around for half an hour, leaving her bodyguards utterly bewildered. "Miss, what are you doing?" one of them asked, watching as she pulled a black, lumpy mass from the oven. His eye twitched. Was she planning to poison Mr. G? "Miss, you can't. He's too important." Brooke shot them a death glare. "What are you talking about? It's a blueberry pie. Jason used to make them for her. Now that he wouldn't forgive her, wouldn't even speak to her, she would make one for him. Maybe if he ate it, he'd be happy enough to forgive her. She would prove to him that anything he could do for her, she could do for him." Her eyes shining with hope, Brooke carefully cradled her creation. Dressed in a carefully selected dress, she walked to the door of the old Miller mansion and rang the bell. The door was opened by a woman in her 50s. "Baby, look what I brought." Brooke's practiced line died on her lips. Who are you?" she asked, her brow furrowed in displeasure. "Mrs. Gable was equally confused. "I'm Mr. G's housekeeper, miss. And you are?" "Oh, I'm a friend of your boss. I'm here to see him," Brooke said, trying to push her way inside. Mrs. Gable quickly blocked her path. "Miss, I'm sorry, but my employer isn't expecting any visitors. I'll have to ask him before I can let you in." Brooke glanced up at the drizzling rain. Her infamous temper flared for a second before she tamped it down. "Fine," she clipped out. "Go ask. He wouldn't refuse to see me," she thought. "He took a bullet for me." If she could just see him, apologize properly, she was sure he wouldn't be able to stay mad at her for long. From an upstairs window, Jason had seen the whole thing. He immediately texted Mrs. Gable. "I won't see her. Tell her to go home. If she doesn't want me to hate her, she should never come back. Our relationship is over." Mrs. Gable had barely stepped back into the foyer when her phone buzzed. She turned and went back to the door. "Miss, I'm sorry, but my employer will not see you." When she relayed Jason's message verbatim, the hopeful smile on Brooke's face shattered. Her heart plummeted, and the pie in her hands, still faintly warm, felt instantly cold. He really doesn't want to see me?" Brooke's eyes welled with tears. The recently stitched wound on her neck began to throb. The cold wind cut through her thin dress, but the chill in her heart was far worse. Fat tears began to roll down her cheeks. She was filled with a mix of regret, indignation, and a deep, aching sadness. He used to hate seeing her stand in the cold. He never could stay mad at her for long. And now, he wouldn't even see her? She knew she was wrong. She wanted to apologize, but he wouldn't even give her the chance. Brooke stood with her head bowed, her hands still gripping the door, refusing to leave. "Please," she said, her voice small. For the first time in her life, she was begging. "Can you just ask him one more time?" Mrs. Gable looked pained. "Miss, please don't make this difficult for me." Realizing it was hopeless, Brooke gave up. "Then, can you give this to him? Tell him I made it myself." To apologize, she shoved the lumpy pie into the housekeeper's hands before Mrs. Gable could refuse and turned and ran. "No, he just doesn't believe me. He doesn't believe I've really changed, that I'm truly sorry. That's why he was ignoring her. He loved her too much to stay away for long. It was clear she wasn't trying hard enough. She had to find a way to make Jason believe her, to make him believe that she liked him. No, that she loved him. She didn't really know what love was, but she knew that when he'd shielded her from harm, she would have rather been hurt herself. She couldn't live without Jason. If that wasn't love, what was? It had to be. Brooke repeated the mantra in her head, a new plan already forming. If he wouldn't see her, she would have to find another way. Her gaze drifted to the high stone wall surrounding the Miller mansion. With a bit of a boost, she could probably climb it. Yes, that was it. Tonight, she would climb the wall and give him a huge surprise. The thought filled her with a manic excitement. From a car parked down the street, Kinsey watched the whole scene, her face a mask of cold fury. "Brooke, I can't believe you. Jason gave his life for you, and you immediately turn around and start chasing another man. You're unbelievable." Watching Brooke deliver gifts and fawn over the new resident, Mr. G, made her teeth ache with rage. How long had Jason been dead? His body wasn't even cold. She had thought Brooke's suicide attempt meant she had truly fallen for him. For a moment, she had even admired Brooke's reckless passion. But now, the moment Brooke saw Mr. G at the hospital, she had forgotten all about her own recovery and chased him here. She even baked a blueberry pie for that asshole. Did he deserve to eat it? That was Jason's thing for Brooke. This woman. She was disgusting. Kinsey couldn't find the words to express her fury. Any chance of reconciliation between them was now gone. She didn't want a friend like this. "Miss, from the way she was looking around, I think she's planning on climbing the wall," her driver noted cautiously. Brooke wasn't exactly subtle. Kinsey's anger flared hotter. "Oh, really? He won't see her, so she's going to break in? Brooke, I'm going to see what the hell you're up to. Pull over. We're waiting for her to make her move." She was going to follow her inside and see just what kind of scumbag Brooke had latched on to now. Inside the Miller mansion, Jason sat on his bed, bandaging his own shoulder. His body was resilient, and the wound hadn't gotten infected despite the constant activity. It hurt, but years of abuse at the hands of his uncle had given him a high tolerance for pain. If it wasn't fatal, it was a minor injury. He just needed to apply some anesthetic. "Mrs. Gable, could you bring me some dinner? I'm getting hungry," he called out. "Of course, sir." Mrs. Gable quickly brought a tray of freshly cooked food, followed hesitantly by Brooke's blueberry pie. Jason frowned at the blackened lump. "Mrs. Gable, I don't eat curry-flavored things. Please take this away." The sight of it was killing his appetite. Mrs. Gable's lips twitched. "It's not curry, sir. It's from the young lady who was here earlier. She sent this to me." "What is it?" Jason poked it with a fork, barely recognizing it as a pie. He was now seriously convinced that Brooke was trying to poison him. "Throw it out," he snapped, then paused, a new idea forming. "Wait, leave it here." He'd put it in the freezer. Then, when the time was right, he'd add his own special ingredients and make her eat every last bite. A glint appeared in Jason's eyes. He ate a few quick bites of his dinner and then lay down to rest. It was almost 9 o'clock. He tossed and turned, his mind a chaotic mess of thoughts about Vivien and Clara. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Clara that morning. Just a few days ago, she had been devastated, even talking about dying with him. But this morning, she seemed so vibrant, as if she had found a new reason to live. She had even eaten with a hearty appetite. As he was puzzling over it, he heard a faint rustling sound. His senses, always sharp, went on high alert. He opened his eyes instantly, but didn't turn on the light, not wanting to spook whoever was out there. He slipped on a jacket and moved silently toward the sound. It was coming from the wall in the courtyard. He put on his mask and crept closer, hearing a woman's voice. "Come on, push. Didn't you just eat dinner? Almost there. Just a little more." Brooke had her hands on top of the wall, using a bodyguard's shoulders as a step stool as she struggled to pull herself up. The act was humiliating, completely at odds with her usual ice queen persona. But if it meant she could see Jason, she didn't care. He had climbed a wall to escape her. Now she would climb one to get to him. With a final grunt of effort, she heaved herself onto the top of the wall. But she'd used too much force and couldn't stop her momentum. She tumbled headfirst over the other side. "Ah!" she shrieked, plummeting toward the hard ground. The next second, instead of the bone-jarring impact she expected, she crashed into a solid, warm embrace. Jason's face was dark as he absorbed the impact of the falling Brooke. He was pretty sure his arm was now broken. Seriously? This woman looked so thin. How did she hit like a sack of bricks? He had just bandaged that wound. And what was she doing climbing his wall in the middle of the night? Did she think he had something worth stealing? Brooke, meanwhile, had her hands clamped over her face, too scared to look. Had she fallen into someone's arms? No one else should be in this house, right? Just Jason and the housekeeper definitely wasn't this strong. Keeping her eyes squeezed shut, Brooke tentatively reached out and felt the man's face, then gave his bicep a squeeze. Not sure. She squeezed again. "Brooke, are you done?" Jason's voice was dangerously low. "Don't tell me you broke into my house in the middle of the night, just to feel on my arm." Jason's expression was thunderous. As Brooke's hands continued to brazenly grope his arm, His patience snapped. He let go. Ah! Brooke yelped as she hit the ground with a solid thump, her face flushing with indignation. She was about to unleash her fury, but then she saw the fresh blood seeping through the bandage on Jason's shoulder, and her anger instantly morphed into guilt-ridden concern. Baby, I didn't mean it, she stammered, her voice softening. She blinked her big, reddened eyes and pouted, trying to look as innocent as possible. Does it still hurt? She asked, her gaze fixed on the spreading stain. What do you think? Jason shot back with a sarcastic smirk. Great. Just great. All that work bandaging it wasted. Oh, baby, I'm really so sorry. Brooke whined, latching onto his arm. Her cheeks were flushed as she called him baby. She'd never called him that so intimately when he was conscious before. She wondered if he liked it. She certainly did. It made them feel closer, more intimate. But for Jason, the word made his skin crawl. Stop. Don't call me baby. Who told you to call me that? He said, looking at her as if she'd grown a second head. He was used to her arrogant, icy demeanor. This sudden change was so jarring he wondered if she'd been possessed. I hear other people say it. And you used to want me to. We're boyfriend and girlfriend, isn't it normal? Brooke clung to his arm, refusing to let go or listen to him. She was terrified that if she let go, he would disappear again. She couldn't lose him. Jason tried to pull his arm free, but her grip was surprisingly strong. He sighed in frustration. That was then, this is now. And who said we're boyfriend and girlfriend? Brooke, we broke up. He spoke with a grim finality, but he failed to notice that Brooke wasn't listening to a word he said. Instead, her eyes were glued to his mouth as it moved. What were you doing? Jason felt a prickle of unease and instinctively took a step back. The look in her eyes was not normal. Why was she staring at his mouth? Nothing. Brooke mumbled, a playful pout on her lips. Your lips just look a little dry. Her gaze grew hotter. Ahem. Jason's face flushed, and he unconsciously covered his mouth. I'm trying to be serious with you. Stop changing the subject. Fine. Brooke agreed with surprising speed. Still clinging to his arm, she tilted her head. So, does this mean you're not denying your Jason? She'd been calling him that this whole time, and he hadn't corrected her. He was even acting naturally around her. He was admitting it, right? For once, Jason was speechless. Miss Lynn, if you have a habit of climbing walls at night, feel free. I'm going to bed. He had to be losing his mind, playing these childish games with this infuriatingly illogical woman in the middle of the night. All he wanted was to sleep. As he turned to leave, he added, By the way, Miss Lynn, we've cleared out most of the stuff in this house. There are only a few large appliances left, probably too big for you to steal. So if you're looking for a place to rob, I'd suggest you try next door. With that deadpan advice, he walked away. Hey, Jason, baby, don't go, I'm scared by myself. Brooke yelped, scrambling after him. For every step he took, she took 3, quickly overtaking him. Jason stopped dead, his patience gone. Brooke, what the hell do you want? They were almost at his bedroom. What was this woman doing, trying to follow a grown man into his room in the middle of the night? If Mrs. Gable woke up and saw this, would she scream thief or seducer? To sleep, of course, Brooke said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. It's cold out here, baby. You wouldn't be so cruel as to make me sleep in the living room, would you? She rubbed her arms, shivering dramatically and looking at him with wide, pleading eyes. A second later, the bedroom door slammed shut in her face. Brooke stood there, stunned, her lips parted in disbelief. Baby, I'm not inside yet, she called out, baffled. He'd shut the door too soon. From inside, Jason's cold voice drifted out. That's the point. You can either go home, or you can find a sofa or a corner in the living room and make do. Let her sleep in his room? Was he an idiot? He wasn't about to let this lunatic stay near him. Wah! At his words, Brooke's eyes reddened, and she looked like she was about to burst into tears. She was a Lynn, the heiress to a fortune. Everyone treated her with respect. She'd never been so humiliated in her life. He was actually telling her to sleep on the sofa. 3 seconds later, she was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, muttering to herself. Fine, I'll sleep on the sofa. Brooke Lynn, never lost. At the Sterling estate. Clara, look, wouldn't this one be adorable on the baby? The matriarch held up a tiny infant outfit, her face beaming. Clara smiled back, a genuine, happy smile. She gently stroked her stomach and nodded. They're both beautiful. We'll take them both. To avoid drawing attention at the hospital, she had moved back to the family estate that day. They had private doctors on call, so she wasn't worried. Now, she and her grandmother were happily picking out clothes for the twins. She'd never spent so much time picking out things for herself. A rare, warm atmosphere filled the grand house. Ma'am, Miss Bianca is here to see you, Ava announced as she entered the room. "Oh, let her in," Clara said with a slight frown, signaling for the bodyguards to clear away the baby items. The fewer people who knew about her pregnancy right now, the better. As for Bianca, she hadn't seen her in days. What did she possibly want? To Clara's surprise, the first thing Bianca asked was, "Aunt Clara, how can you be sitting around? Have you found Jason?" Clara's brow furrowed. "Bianca, why are you so concerned about this?" Bianca had been at the wedding. She knew Brooke had crashed it and run off with Jason, so it wasn't entirely strange. But that was days ago. Jason and Bianca didn't even know each other. Why was she so fixated on him? This was the second time she'd come to ask. The first time, Clara had been too consumed by grief to notice, but now it struck her as odd. "Aunt Clara, I'm just worried about you. Is there still no news? You don't think he's in some kind of danger, do you?" Bianca hid the anxiety in her eyes, but her heart was pounding. She had been trying to find Jason for 2 days, sending him message after message. He hadn't replied to a single one. He had vanished. That wasn't like him. Even if he wasn't talking to Brooke or Clara, he would never ignore her. A sense of deep unease washed over her. Clara looked at her niece's frantic expression and sighed. "Jason, he was in a car accident. The car went into the river. He's gone." As she spoke, her own eyes reddened with a fresh wave of grief. She instinctively touched her stomach. If it weren't for the twins, she might have already lost the will to live. They were the only reason she was still fighting. After they were born, she would go find him. "What did you say?" Bianca shot to her feet as if she'd been electrocuted. "Jason, how could something happen to him?" She stared at Clara, convinced she had misheard. But then she saw the tears tracking down her aunt's face, and her mind went blank with a roaring sound. A surge of hot pressure rose in her chest, and a metallic taste filled her throat. "Miss Bianca," Ava cried out, watching in horror as Bianca coughed, a spray of red misting the air. The room erupted into chaos. "What happened?" "She just suddenly coughed up blood," the matriarch exclaimed, panicked. Servants and bodyguards rushed to support the swaying girl. Clara watched the scene unfold, her frown deepening. "Get Dr. Luo here. Now." Her mind was racing. Bianca's reaction was far too extreme. Her cold gaze fell on Ava. "Investigate Bianca's time at A-list university. I want to know if she knew Jason." A dark suspicion was forming in her mind. "Yes, ma'am." Ava nodded, dispatching one person to call for Dr. Luo and another to start the investigation. Bianca was oblivious to it all, her eyes vacant, lost in the echo of Clara's words. "Brother is gone? My brother, my kind, gentle brother who always took care of me. He's never coming back? He's gone from my life forever?" It felt like a nightmare, but a nightmare that was terrifyingly real. "Where is his body?" she asked, her voice numb and her lips trembling. "I have to see his body." Ava frowned, her expression unreadable. "Miss Bianca, the funeral arrangements at the estate for the past 2 days. They were for him. He's buried in the Sterling family cemetery." Before she had even finished speaking, Bianca broke free from the bodyguard's grasp. "I have to see him." For the first time, she dropped her careful facade in front of Clara and made a dash for the door. A voice, cold as ice, stopped her in her tracks. "Bianca, stop." Clara rose slowly, her eyes fixed on Bianca's back, her expression hardening. "If you knew Jason, you should have told me." While she was possessive, she wouldn't have forbidden him from having normal friends, especially not with a member of her own family. But Bianca had hidden it from her. "Take Miss Bianca to her room," Clara commanded, her voice softening almost imperceptibly after a long moment. "She needs medical attention. It's raining outside. You can't go out like this. If you want to see him, I will take you to the cemetery tomorrow morning. Tonight, you will rest." She still had a sliver of pity for Bianca. The girl had been frail her whole life due to her albinism. Whatever was going on, it could wait until morning. Clara's sharp tone froze Bianca in place. A stubborn look crossed her face, but she allowed the staff to lead her away. Not long after Dr. Luo arrived, yawning, to tend to her. Back at the Miller mansion, Jason was tossing and turning in bed. His mind was a tangled mess of Vivien and Clara. Brooke couldn't sleep either. Curled up on the sofa, she was secretly reading a book by the moonlight, The Art of Seduction, a modern girl's guide. She had just gotten to the chapter on how to apologize and win your man back. It was pure gold, worth every penny. After a long while, Jason gave up on sleep. He got up and went to the living room for a glass of water and a sleeping pill. The moment Brooke heard his door open, she hid the book and pretended to be asleep. As he passed the sofa, he saw her curled into a tiny ball. She was clearly a restless sleeper. One pale foot was dangling over the edge of the sofa, and the blanket had fallen to the floor. She looked pale and fragile without her makeup, almost pitiable. She seemed to be having a nightmare, her brow furrowed and her lips moving silently. Jason frowned and leaned closer. He could just make out the faint whisper. Jason, Jason, I'm so sorry. Don't ignore me. The words were barely audible, but they hit him with unexpected force. A wave of something akin to pity washed over him. With a sigh, he picked up the blanket from the floor and draped it over her. He grabbed his water and turned to go back to his room. The second his back was turned, Brooke's eyes snapped open. A triumphant smile played on her lips. Seeing him about to disappear back into his room, she slipped off the sofa and tiptoed up behind him. A soft hand snaked around his waist. Jason's whole body went rigid. He grabbed her wrist. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice deliberately cold. Brooke whimpered, as if he'd scared her. "Baby, it's cold out here. I want to come inside." She blinked her watery eyes, looking up at him pleadingly. Jason's jaw twitched. He had forgotten. He'd sold the central heating unit, and the new one hadn't arrived yet. "Fine," he finally relented. "You sleep on the floor? And don't you dare touch my bed." "Okay. Thank you, Jason." Before he'd even finished speaking, Brooke leaned up and planted a quick kiss on his cheek. Blushing furiously, she happily grabbed her little blanket and bounced into his room, all traces of her shivering gone. She knew it. Jason was a total softie. He couldn't stay mad at her for long. Who knew the art of seduction would be so effective? Brooke, giddy with success, secretly tucked her book into her blanket. Once inside the room, she made a beeline for Jason's bed. One glare from him stopped her in her tracks. Reluctantly, she shuffled over to the side of the bed. "Baby, the floor is cold," she whined, attempting to deploy the blinking puppy dog eyes technique from her guide. She blinked so fast she nearly gave herself a seizure, but Jason remained unmoved. "Don't even start," he said, his voice flat. "There's a space heater in here. You won't be cold." He saw right through her act. Seeing she was caught, Brooke pouted and laid her blanket on the floor. "Are you really going to make me sleep all alone down here?" she tried one last time. Jason didn't miss a beat. "You could always go back out to the sofa." "Never mind. The floor is actually quite comfortable," Brooke muttered. Jason ignored her, drank his water, and got into bed. A minute later, he realized she wasn't even trying to sleep. She was lying on the floor, propped up on her elbows, staring at him with wide, shining eyes, as if he were a priceless treasure. It was making his skin crawl. He rolled over, turning his back to her, hoping she'd get the hint. Instead, she just stared more intensely, making the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He couldn't take it. He rolled back over. "What is it you want?" "Nothing. Just looking at you like this is nice." She rested her chin in her hands, a look of pure contentment on her face. It wasn't just about being in the same room with him. It was more. Now, no one else knew he was alive. Only her. Didn't that mean if she could just win him back, he would be all hers? Then she could finally take him to the basement she'd prepared at her estate outside the city. They could live there forever. All she needed was him. At the thought, her gaze grew even more fervent. Jason swallowed hard, a bad feeling creeping over him. He decided to stop engaging. He'd just have to put up with it for one night. First thing in the morning, he was selling this house. Moving. Definitely moving. But Brooke couldn't stand the silence. "Baby, did you eat the blueberry pie I made for you? Was it good?" she asked, her voice full of hope. That did it. He wasn't sleeping now. He sat up, walked over to the desk, and picked up the blackened lump, setting it down in front of her. "Does this look edible to you?" he asked, his face grim. Brooke flushed. Of course it is. I made it especially for you." "Then you eat it." She went silent. Jason's eyes narrowed. He'd found her weak spot. "You said you wanted to apologize. Is this your idea of a sincere apology?" He held the pie closer to her face. They were locked in a tense standoff, completely oblivious to the new commotion outside. "Are you sure this is the place?" Kinsey stared up at the nearly 7-foot wall. "Is Brooklyn part gecko? How did she climb this?" She sighed. "All right, bend over. I'll use you as a step." With her bodyguard's help, she scrambled awkwardly onto the top of the wall. As soon as she did, she heard muffled voices from inside the bedroom. "Brooke, you do realize that breaking and entering is a crime, right? If I call the NYPD, you'd be locked up for at least 10 days. You don't want that, do you?" a man's low voice said. Brooke's voice was panicked. "No, I'll eat it. I'll eat it." If she got locked up for 2 weeks, it would be all over. A regular person, she could pull strings for her. But if Mr. G pressed charges, no one at the precinct would help her. She'd be stuck. She looked at Jason's cold, unyielding face and started to sniffle. "Maybe we can wash it first." Looking at the brown-black mass, she realized she had dug her own grave. It was burnt to a crisp, If she washed off the burnt parts, maybe it would be edible? She wished she'd never made it. No, Jason said flatly. No excuses. This woman was definitely trying to poison him. She wouldn't even eat her own creation. Didn't you say you'd do anything for my forgiveness? So this is where you draw the line. Tonight, she was eating this pie, one way or another. Fine. If I eat it, will you forgive me? I'll eat it. Brooke knew she couldn't get out of this. All she wanted was to hear him say yes. But Jason wasn't letting her off that easy. No. Now, are you going to eat it or not? After she'd chased him down on a highway, did she really think one burnt pie would fix everything? With a look of utter defeat, Brooke brought the pie to her lips. Their muffled argument carried out to Kinsey on the wall. She couldn't make out the exact words, only something about eating, mixed with what sounded like flirtatious banter. Her face turned crimson with rage. Brooke Lynn, you shameless hussy. This was too much. Jason was dead, and these two were in there playing sweet little games? Even her bodyguards were blushing, listening to the couple's apparent pillow talk. I'll make you eat it. Kinsey finally snapped. She took a rock from a bodyguard and hurled it at Jason's bedroom window. Crash! The glass shattered, sending shards flying into the room. Jason, his reflexes sharp, instinctively pulled Brooke out of the way. The rock thudded harmlessly onto the floor, but his face was black with fury. Who's there? He roared. On the wall, Kinsey realized she'd messed up and tried to scramble away. In her haste, her foot slipped and she tumbled into the courtyard with a shriek. The fall wasn't short. The moment she landed, a sharp pain shot up her leg. It was definitely broken. Hearing the crash and the shriek, Jason and Brooke exchanged a look. What now? And why did that scream sound so familiar? They threw on jackets and hurried downstairs. There, sitting on the ground with a pained, ghostly white face, was Kinsey. She saw them and froze, her jaw stiff. The three of them stared at each other. The silence was excruciatingly awkward. Ahem. The moon is really bright tonight, Kinsey finally said, trying to salvage the situation. Brooke glanced up at the overcast sky and let out a cold, humorless laugh. Are you kidding me? There is no moon. Caught in her lie, Kinsey's face flushed a deeper shade of red. I was just out for a walk. She was sticking to her story, no matter how ridiculous. Jason was almost amused. This girl was something else. Out for a walk. In his backyard? Did his house have a gold mine he didn't know about? Kinsey glared at them, her face a mixture of anger and embarrassment. The memory of their flirtatious banter from the bedroom still stung. You must be Mr. G, right? It's a pleasure. You see, I seem to have twisted my ankle on my walk. You wouldn't mind if I came in for a bit, would you? She pushed herself up, extending a hand to Jason. She was going to find out what these two shameless dogs were up to. Jason was barely gone, and Brooke was already moving on. She wouldn't let them get away with it. Of course. Miss Luo, please come in, Jason said, seizing the opportunity. He was desperate for a buffer against Brooke's clinginess. Kinsey was perfect. He took her wrist and helped her up. No, Kinsey, don't you have your own house? Get out of her house. Get out. Brooke panicked, trying to push Kinsey away. How dare she hold Jason's hand? He was her baby now, hers alone. And what if Kinsey stayed and figured out who Jason really was? Then she couldn't have him all to herself. To Kinsey, Brooke's frantic protest just looked like guilt. Brooke, Mr. G already said yes. What are you screaming about? And since when is this your house? She sniffed, shot Brooke a dirty look, and let Jason lead her inside. You, Kinsey, are you even my friend anymore? Brooke shrieked, but Kinsey ignored her. They were best friends. But after this, Kinsey was done. She wouldn't be friends with a shameless woman who would betray Jason's memory like this. That leg looks broken, Jason said, ignoring Brooke's tantrum. Mrs. Gable, could you bring the first aid kit? Right away, sir. Jason helped Kinsey to the sofa. Miss Luo, I believe your family are renowned doctors. I assume you know how to treat this yourself. It wouldn't be appropriate for him, as a stranger, to tend to her injury. He handed her the kit. Yes, thank you, Kinsey said through gritted teeth. On the surface, she was calm, but inside she was fuming. What a gentleman. She'd heard him and Brooke playing their kinky games just a minute ago, and now he was putting on this polite act for her. She would see how long they could keep it up. Mrs. Gable, please prepare some snacks for Miss Luo, Jason said. Soon, a tray of pastries, snacks, and fruit appeared. Brooke stood to the side, fuming. Why was her baby being so nice to Kinsey? He hadn't offered her any snacks when she arrived. He tried to force-feed her a burnt pie. To make matters worse, Jason sat down next to Kinsey. Seeing that her hands were busy with her ankle, he casually picked up a small cake and, out of old habit, held it to her lips. Try this, Miss Luo. See if you like it. Back when he was giving pies to Brooke, he had often used Kinsey as the go-between, and he'd always had her taste test them first. Kinsey was momentarily stunned by the sudden attention. Thank you, she stammered, taking a small, awkward bite. Brooke watched, feeling like she was about to spontaneously combust. Mr. G, you don't have to worry about her. Kinsey's as strong as an ox. She can feed herself. Brooke seethed. Last year, she kicked a soccer ball so hard it flew into the basketball court and nearly castrated one of the players. She's basically a man, you don't need to coddle her. Still not satisfied, she grabbed a pastry, squeezed past Jason, and shoved it into Kinsey's mouth. You want pastries? Here, have a pastry. This two-faced mole, acting all prim and proper when she was usually a complete spaz, and eating food offered by her baby, and sitting next to him, wasting their precious time together. Kinsey, her mouth full, was turning purple with rage as Brooke recounted her most embarrassing moments. She swallowed hard and fired back. That's nothing compared to you, Brooke. I hear your family has already arranged a marriage for you. I bet Mr. G doesn't know about that, does he? She turned to Jason, a triumphant smirk on her face. She couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he learned Brooke was already engaged to someone else. Let's see if he still wanted her then. Jason did look surprised. Miss Lynn, you getting married? He asked, looking at Brooke. He didn't actually care if she was engaged. They were broken up, after all. But if she was about to be married, why was she breaking into his house and calling him baby? No, absolutely not. That was just my family being ridiculous. I never agreed to it, and I will never marry any of them. Brooke panicked at the look on Jason's face, clapping a hand over Kinsey's mouth. You know me, there's only ever been one person for me. If you don't believe me, I can prove it to you. Brooke's gaze on Jason was now hot and heavy. If he wanted her, she wasn't going to say no. Clara had been with him. Why couldn't she? Jason saw the look in her eyes and felt a wave of alarm. Ahem. Miss Lynn, let's talk about something serious. Serious? What's serious? Kinsey snapped, wedged between them. These two had the nerve to be making eyes at each other, right in front of her. She'd had enough. Mr. G, if it's not too much trouble, I think I'll stay here for the night. I don't think I can walk on this leg. She pushed herself between them. Fine, Jason agreed, after a moment's hesitation. He glanced at her leg. You can sleep on the floor with Brooke. His bed was off limits. No, I'm not sleeping with her. Brooke protested immediately. Then you can go home. Brooke's face fell. One sentence from Jason, and she was silenced. Fine, I'll sleep with her, she grumbled, grabbing her blanket and picking a spot on the floor close to Jason's side of the bed. She shot Kinsey a dirty look. Stalker. Kinsey ignored her. She wasn't leaving tonight. She would not allow these two to carry on under her nose when Jason was barely in his grave. At the Sterling estate. She's asleep. Clara, dressed in a silk nightgown, leaned against the doorframe of the guest room, looking at the sleeping form of Bianca. Yes, Dr. Luo said, wiping his brow. I gave her a sedative. She's stable for now. Thank you for your trouble, Doctor, Clara said, nodding to a bodyguard. It's late. My men will see you home. Regarding the next phase of our medical group's projects, the contracts will continue to go to the Luo family. Dr. Luo nodded, and after a few more instructions, he was escorted out. Once he was gone, Clara turned to Ava. I hear the old Miller mansion is now occupied by a Mr. G. Yes, ma'am, Ava said, helping Clara back to her study. Why do you ask? No reason, Clara said, shaking her head. Tomorrow morning, we'll pay this Mr. G a visit. Jason's assets belong to her now. She hoped Mr. G would be reasonable. If not, she would have to use other methods. Yes, ma'am, Ava replied. Then she added, Ma'am, I also heard that Brooke Lynn checked out of the hospital today. She immediately bought the villa next to the old Miller mansion and paid a visit to Mr. G tonight. I don't know what she's thinking. One minute she was trying to kill herself over Jason's death. The next she was chasing after another man. It made no sense. She went to his house. Clara's brow furrowed. That lunatic. She had thought Brooke's love for Jason was so profound. Turns out, she moved on at the drop of a hat. Clara would never understand Brooke's mind, but she knew one thing. She was carrying Jason's babies. No matter what crazy stunts Brooke pulled, she could never top that. Don't worry about her, Clara said with a dismissive sniff, stroking her belly. Let her cause a scene. She couldn't wait to see the look on Brooke's face when she found out she was pregnant with Jason's children. A small, cruel smile touched Clara's lips. At the Sue family estate in the Swiss Alps, Julian soon knelt on the cold marble floor of the family library, his teeth clenched against the pane. His back was a bloody mess. His father sat in a high-backed chair, his face half hidden in shadow, a riding crop in his hand. The pressure in the room was suffocating. Father, I was wrong, Julian gritted out, his head bowed low, his eyes burning with defiance. His mother was sobbing beside him. "You monster! I nearly died giving birth to this boy. And you beat him like this? Are you trying to kill him? It would be no less than he deserves. Ask him what he's done," his father roared, ignoring his wife's cries. "I gave one order. Do not let Vivien return to New York. Who let her go?" That girl, once nothing more than a convenient blood bag, now held far too many of the family's secrets. And his idiot son had just let her walk right back into the lion's den. "Father, you're being paranoid. She has an escort. What trouble could she possibly cause?" Julian shot back. The riding crop whistled through the air and cracked against his back again. "Silence. That escort has gone dark. It's because of your stupidity that we are now facing this disaster." His father's words finally broke through Julian's haze of anger. "Gone dark? How is that possible? That little bitch is nothing but an ornament." "Shut your mouth," his father bellowed. "I don't care how you do it. In 2 days, that Mr. G is holding a press conference. You will attend, and you will bring Vivien back here. How had he produced such a son? So clever in business, yet a complete fool when it came to that girl." A realization dawned on Julian. "Yes, father. So that's what this was. That bitch had provoked him on purpose, just to get back to New York. Fine. If she wanted to go back so badly, she could stay there. Forever." A murderous look entered Julian's eyes. He had no idea that every word spoken in that library was being streamed directly to Vivien's ears. Hearing that Julian was coming back, her eyes turned blood red. Good. As long as he came back. Her plan had worked perfectly. "Jason," she whispered, caressing the ring on her finger, her eyes misting over. "Watch me from heaven. I'll send him to hell, and then I'll come join you." Just then, her assistant entered the room. Seeing the look on Vivien's face, she softened her voice. "Miss, you asked me to investigate the identity of the man we met on the road today. I have the results." The assistant's voice broke the silence, and Vivien slowly turned her head. "Speak," she said, her lips barely moving, the single word a quiet, cold command. "Yes, ma'am." The assistant, sensing her boss's dark mood, lowered her voice. "The man you met today is Mr. G, a new player in New York. They say he's only in his 20s, but has already carved out a significant space for himself. Some are even saying his new group could one day compete with the Lynns or the Sterlings." She paused. "He doesn't have any children, but he's the primary benefactor for a children's home. The word is he's very good to the kids there, visits every week." The assistant hesitated again. It's the same home you stayed at." At that, Vivien's expression finally shifted. "He's funding the children's home." She frowned, her eyes darkening. She'd heard of this Mr. G before. His reputation was hard to ignore. But he'd never shown his face in the city until now. Was it because of the burn scars? And he just happened to be the benefactor for her old children's home? Could it really be a coincidence? "Is there anything else on him?" Vivien pressed. The assistant shook her head. "Mr. G is a ghost. Almost no one knows him personally. This is all we could dig up. Oh, except he was the one who had the children's home relocated a few days ago. It was him." Vivien's frown deepened. She couldn't make sense of it. The face was completely unfamiliar, definitely not Jason's. Perhaps it really was just a coincidence. "You can go," she said, rubbing her temples. "Start prepping for the press conference in a few days." Whoever this Mr. G was, it didn't matter right now. First, she had to deal with Julian Sue. Only then could Jason rest in peace. The thought was a bitter pill. She refused to accept his death, but the DNA results were a fact she couldn't deny. The next morning, "Daddy, don't go. Don't leave me." Jason was pulled from a deep sleep by the scent of a woman's perfume and a soft murmuring in his ear. He pried his eyes open to find Brooke, who had been on the floor, was now in his bed. She was clinging to him like a human koala, arms and legs wrapped tightly around his body, her entire weight pressing down on him. She was muttering about her parents, her face streaked with tears, a picture of pitiable vulnerability. Jason, however, felt like he was being suffocated. "Brooke, hey, let go," he hissed, trying to wake her. In response, she just smacked her lips and clamped a hand over his mouth. "Shuh, people are trying to sleep," she mumbled, stretching a long, pale leg before drifting off again. A muscle twitched in Jason's jaw. A storm was gathering on his face. As he was about to shove her off, he noticed something tucked under her arm. He frowned, carefully pulling it out. "The Art of Seduction, a Modern Girl's Guide. How to Make Your Husband Never Leave You," he read aloud in a shocked whisper. "How to make your husband clingier. How to make him beg for you. How to stop him from getting mad. How to convince him to get married." Jason stared at the sections Brooke had highlighted in red pen, a dark line forming on his forehead. The sound of his voice woke Kinsey. What's that? She rubbed her sleepy eyes, glanced at the still snoozing Brooke, and scooted closer to Jason. She read over his shoulder. 10 ways for a power babe to play coy. A must for the adorable ingenue. Winning over your reserve husband is no longer a dream. Kinsey's voice grew quieter, and her face redder as she read. She flipped the book over. The art of seduction. What is this garbage? That shameless woman. Reading this kind of stuff. And she didn't even share it. Wait, let me see that power babe section again. Kinsey cleared her throat, and under Jason's stunned gaze, flipped back to the previous page. Power babe flirting requires a breathy, soft voice and a sultry gaze. Call him baby with intimacy. Your playful punches should land with purpose. Think baby, say baby, let your eyes see nothing but baby. Shower him with baby this and baby that, and when baby needs something, he'll be sure to handle it. Kinsey's eyes lit up. So that's how it works, she thought, feeling a sudden urge to try it out. She glanced around. Jason was the only man available. She drew back her hand and aimed a tentative punch at his chest. Mister, gee, if I like someone, do you think this would work? Punching him playfully like this. As she spoke, she tried to bat her eyelashes flirtatiously. What she didn't account for was that her fist landed directly on Jason's barely healed wound. Kinsey was the type of woman who worked out religiously to maintain her figure. She could end a bloodline with one kick and crush a soda can with one hand. A sharp, choked gasp escaped Jason's lips. He doubled over, face turning a dark red as a speck of blood hit his lips. The wound felt like it had ripped open again. A whole night of recovery, wasted. Oh my God, I didn't even hit you that hard. Kinsey gasped, horrified. Are you okay, mister? Gee, should I call a doctor? She started to panic. But wait, she was a doctor. Don't talk. Let me check your heart rate and pulse. Kinsey tried to steady herself. Her stethoscope wasn't with her, so she grabbed his wrist with one hand and pressed her other hand flat against his chest, listening intently. No, don't. Jason panicked. If she discovered the extent of his injuries, his cover would be blown. He tried to wave her off, but in his haste, he pulled his hand back too forcefully, yanking the already off-balance Kinsey with him. Ah! She cried out as they both tumbled to the floor. She landed on top of him, her hand still pressed firmly against his chest. In that instant, the powerful, steady beat of his heart thudded against her palm like a drum. Kinsey's face flushed a deep crimson. And mister, gee, she stammered, her voice trembling. Your heart. It's beating so fast. Jason's own face grew hot. Is it? They were so close, the air thick with an awkward, charged energy. He let out a strange, nervous laugh. Just then, a cold voice sliced through the tension from above. What are you two doing? Brooke's face was a dark mask, the rage in her chest threatening to erupt. She'd been asleep for a few hours, and these two were already getting cozy right in front of her. The way they were positioned on the floor, Kinsey's hand on Jason's chest. It was hard not to jump to conclusions. Kinsey. Brooke's furious, red-rimmed eyes locked onto her. She knew Jason was injured. There was no way he could be doing that. So was it something else? Had Kinsey developed a thing for Mr. G? No, that couldn't be right. She didn't know who he really was. Jason and Kinsey shifted uncomfortably under her glare. Brooke, it's not what you think. Mr. G, and I just tripped and fell, that's all. Even though they weren't best friends anymore, a sliver of their old bond remained. Kinsey realized how bad it looked and scrambled to her feet to explain. Oh, really? Then why were you on top of him? Brooke sneered, not buying it for a second. Kinsey, don't tell me you've fallen for Mr. G now, too. The accusation made Kinsey's face burn. Brooke Lynn, how dare you? You are unbelievable, she shot back. You think everyone's like you? Moving on to a new man the second Jason is gone? You're shameless. Kinsey's face was a mottled mess of red and white. She had come here to bust Brooke, and now the tables were turned on her. Brooke was just too much. You. Brooke was momentarily speechless. She wanted to deny it, but she couldn't reveal Jason's identity. The last thing she wanted was for Kinsey to know he was alive. So, she just rolled her eyes. I'm not stooping to your level. Mr. G, are you okay? Shoving Kinsey aside, Brooke rushed to Jason's side. Then she stopped. Something was missing. Where was her book? Kinsey, did you take my book? Brooke frowned, searching around. It was a limited edition, and she wasn't even finished with it. Kinsey just pursed her lips and said nothing. It was Jason, who had been watching the drama unfold, who finally spoke up. Looking for this? He dangled the art of seduction from his fingers. Give it back. Brooke's cheeks flushed scarlet. She lunged for it, but Jason, quick as a flash, pulled it out of her reach. I had no idea you were into this kind of thing, he teased, flipping through the pages. No wonder she'd been calling him baby nonstop for the past 2 days. So this was where she learned it. What kind of garbage was this? It wasn't completely useless, he supposed. But for Brooke, he felt it was better for her mental health if she stayed away from such toxic literature. Confiscated, he declared, placing the book on a high shelf where she couldn't reach it. What? Brooke's lip quivered. Baby, I wasn't finished. Can I have it back? I'll let you confiscate it when I'm done. Okay. She was just getting to the good part. The chapter on how to get your husband to be a good little spoon in bed was next. Just then, a knock came from the bedroom door. Sir, are you awake? It was Mrs. Gable. She had prepared a huge breakfast but had been hesitant to disturb them. She'd seen two beautiful young women enter his room last night and had heard the commotion just now. Young people these days, she thought with a sigh, they really knew how to have fun. She wouldn't have interrupted, but a luxury car had just pulled up and an even more stunning woman had come to the door. Not wanting to be rude, she had no choice but to knock. I'm up, Mrs. Gable. What is it? Jason stopped teasing Brooke and opened the door. He was wearing a simple set of pajamas, having discreetly stuffed a couple of shoulder pads inside to maintain his disguise. Mrs. Gable looked a bit embarrassed. Well, sir, there's a young lady at the door. She says she's here to see you. See me? Jason frowned. Not many people knew him as Mr. G. All right, I'll be right there. Jason walked out into the living room. Brooke and Kinsey exchanged a look. Well, baby, you handle your business. I'm going to take a shower, Brooke chirped. She had climbed a wall to get here last night and had sweated all over him while sleeping. The art of seduction said a woman should always be soft and smell good. She couldn't fall behind. Her eyes lit up as she spotted a woman's pajama set in the closet, a matching one to Jason's. It must have come as a set that Jason hadn't thrown away. He must have been saving it for her. Baby is so sweet, Brooke thought joyfully. Meanwhile, Jason had reached the front of the house and opened the door. It was early morning, and the air was crisp. He looked out but saw no one, only his signature Maybach parked down the street. A knot formed in his stomach. Before he could turn around, a cool, female voice spoke from behind him. It's been a while. Clara Sterling stood there, dressed in a form-fitting black top and jeans, foregoing her usual heels. A single, expensive-looking black trench coat was draped over her shoulders. Her expression was as cool as ever, her dark hair catching the wind. She looked just as she had the first time they met, breathtakingly beautiful and utterly untouchable. For a moment, Jason forgot how to breathe. Miss Sterling, can I help you? His voice was a low rumble. Something about her gaze made him tense up. Why was she here at this hour? Had she found out? No, she couldn't have. He studied her expression, taking a subtle step back, his guard up. Clara didn't seem to notice. I know it's rude to show up unannounced, but there was something I wanted to discuss with you, Mr. G. May I come in? Her gaze swept over his face, cold and detached. There was something familiar about him, but a passing resemblance proved nothing. Still, looking at him made her feel an inexplicable weight in her chest, so she quickly looked away. Of course. Come in, Jason said, relieved that she hadn't discovered his identity. He stepped aside. Clara walked in, Ava following close behind. You know, Mr. G, in a way, we're old acquaintances, she said as her eyes scanned the yard of the old Miller family home. A faint redness crept into her eyes. Her mind wasn't on the conversation. This house. This was her real reason for being here. Looking at the unfamiliar surroundings, she couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. This was the ground where Jason grew up. Even though most of the furniture was gone, just standing here, she felt like she could sense his presence. Baby, I had Mrs. Gable heat up breakfast. Come and eat. Just as Clara closed her eyes, lost in the moment, Brooke's cheerful voice rang out from behind Jason. Clara's expression froze. Mr. G, you have another woman in your house. She had heard he was single. And that voice. Why did it sound so familiar? Miss Sterling, you misheard. Jason's face stiffened. He tried to explain, but Clara had already strode past him into the living room. No need to explain, Mr. G. It's perfectly normal, Clara said with a tight smile, though her words dripped with ice. If my husband were still alive, I imagine we'd be just as sweet. Inside, Brooke was bustling around the kitchen, a plate of toast in her hand, the very picture of a doting wife. When Clara walked in and saw her, she stopped dead in her tracks. You, they both said at the same time. Brooke, wearing a small apron over a loose-fitting pajama set, a perfect match to Jason's, was using the outfit to accentuate her figure. Seeing Clara appear out of nowhere, she froze. Why you? Clara, what are you doing here? She stammered, grabbing Jason and pulling him behind her like a mother hen protecting her chick. No way. Did she find out he's alive this fast? Is she here for him? Is she trying to steal him from me? A wave of panic washed over Brooke. Clara, however, was staring at their matching pajamas and their intimate posture. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Just then, another voice came from the direction of the bathroom. Brooke Lynn, that is so unfair. You took the only pajamas. What am I supposed to wear? Kinsey emerged, wrapped in a bathrobe, one hand clutching it shut while the other tried to cover herself, her face beat red. When she saw Clara, she felt as if she'd walked into the wrong house. And Miss Sterling? What are you doing here? She mumbled, utterly bewildered. This was Mr. G's house. What was Clara doing here? And now she was standing here in just a bathrobe. This was not a good look. You. As expected, Clara's shocked gaze flickered from Brooke to Kinsey and back again. The misunderstanding was complete. You're all dating? At the same time. Brooke, weren't you in the hospital yesterday? How did you get here? She was speechless. Yesterday, she had personally witnessed Brooke's suicide attempt. Yesterday, she was ready to die for Jason. And today, she was in Mr. G's house. Her arranged marriage wasn't with Mr. G. Clara's face darkened, her stare drilling into Brooke. Don't you feel you're wronging Jason? If it weren't for you, he might not have died. And now you're here, cooking for another man. Now she understood the rumors about Brooke Lynn. How could she be so heartless? And you, Kinsey. She'd always thought Kinsey was a loyal friend. How could she get involved in something so sordid with Brooke? Clara's gaze shifted to Jason, her opinion of him plummeting. Birds of a feather flocked together. She had thought Mr. G was a capable, respectable man. Turns out he was just like the rest of them. She pressed a hand to her chest, which was heaving with rage. Brooke and Kinsey saw her fury and panicked. You don't understand. It's not what you think. Ask Kinsey. We were together yesterday, but nothing happened. Brooke insisted, pulling Kinsey forward. Kinsey nodded frantically. That's right, Miss Sterling. Please don't misunderstand. There's nothing going on between me and Mr. G. I followed Brooke here. As for what she did, I can't say. She shot Brooke a suspicious look. She was telling the truth, after all. Brooke exploded. Kinsey, I'm your best friend. How could you say that? Then why don't you tell us why you climbed over a wall in the middle of the night to see Mr. G? Brooke opened her mouth, then shut it. You wouldn't understand. The only one I'll ever love is Jason, so stay out of my business. She had almost blurted out Jason's real identity, but looking at Clara and Kinsey, remembering how they'd both competed with her for him in the past, she bit her tongue. Let them stay in the dark. No one's going to take Jason from her. With that thought, she possessively looped her arm through Jason's, pouting at the two women. Clara and Kinsey's faces darkened further. Her silence was an admission. Unbelievable. I'm here today to discuss business with Mr. G. I'll deal with you later. We have a score to settle. Clara gritted her teeth, her glare slicing through Brooke before she placed a contract on the table in front of Jason. Mr. G. I'm sure you're aware that the house you're currently residing in was meant to be my husband's inheritance. I don't care how you acquired it. I'm giving you a choice. We can make a deal. I will trade you one of my properties, a villa near the Sterling estate, for this house. The contract has all the details. Because of Brooke, Clara's attitude toward Mr. G had turned to ice. She cut straight to the chase, her voice growing colder until the entire living room felt like it was freezing over. Jason's lips twitched. He looked at the contract, and when he heard property and villa, his eyes lit up. This house may have belonged to his parents, but he'd only lived here for 5 years before his uncle's family moved in. He didn't have that many deep childhood memories here. It offered a sliver of comfort, but right now, a fat paycheck offered a lot more. Jason nodded decisively. Miss Sterling, you're too generous. It's a deal. Perfect. This way, he wouldn't have to be Brooke's neighbor anymore, living in constant fear. No. The moment Jason nodded, Brooke shot up as if she'd been electrocuted. You can't sign that. You can't leave. She had just bought the house next door, and letting Jason live next to Clara? That was like throwing a lamb into a wolf's den. She would absolutely not allow it. Brooke, I don't believe you have a say in this, Clara snapped, her anger flaring. It's bad enough you're shacking up with another man, but now you're trying to stop me from reclaiming Jason's ancestral home? What is your game? She couldn't wrap her head around it. This was the same woman who had crashed a wedding for Jason, yet now she acted like this. Did she feel no shame? Brooke faltered, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. She glanced at Jason's shoulder, remembering the injury he'd taken for her, and finally relented. Fine, but baby, I'll buy the house next to that one soon, and I'll come be with you. If she had to, she would stick to his side every single day. Once she won him back, she'd take him far away, to a place where Clara Sterling could never find him. You're still coming? Jason was horrified. Miss Sterling, would it be possible to sell me all the houses next to yours? The whole point of this deal was to get away from Brooke. Ahem. Clara coughed, sensing the strange tension. I'm sorry, mister. Gee, but the neighboring properties aren't mine. She owned a lot of real estate, but not there. Her estate was in a more secluded area, and the land around it had no commercial value. She had bought a few villas there on a whim, but that was it. Jason's mouth twitched. In a way the others couldn't see, he discreetly tapped the chip behind his ear. Sprite, see if he could buy up all the villas in that area. He was truly done with Brooke's antics. Okay, I'm on it. Sprite's voice crackled, accompanied by the sound of munching sunflower seeds. They're about 50 million a pop for 500 units total. Let me see. Carry the one. You're looking at around 2 billion. Jason suddenly felt that maybe, just maybe, being Brooke's neighbor wasn't so bad after all. That area is so expensive? Is Clara really that rich? He remembered Victor Sterling had embezzled 50 million, thinking it was all of the company's liquid assets. He knew Clara was wealthy, but he never knew how wealthy. A flicker of curiosity sparked in him. Sprite chuckled on the other end. What do you think? She's the richest person in New York City. Company assets, real estate. You're talking hundreds of billions. Easy. This is NYC. Every square inch is worth a fortune. She held back a laugh. Jason had done well for himself over the years, but his wealth was primarily in his company. When it came to real estate and generational assets, he couldn't compare to the Sterling family's deep-rooted fortune. What? Are you falling for her? Sprite teased. You know, this Brooke girl isn't so bad. She's almost as rich as Clara, and you've got her wrapped around your finger. Better than Vivien, anyway. Why do you always bring her up? The moment he heard Vivien's name, Jason wanted to end the conversation. He quickly signed his name on the contract. Miss Sterling's offer is very generous. I agree to all the terms. To be honest, I wasn't comfortable here anyway. I don't have much to move. I could be out today. Would you mind showing me the house? He just wanted to get away from Brooke. Besides, you had to inspect the goods before you bought. Clara frowned slightly, her hand drifting to her stomach. After a moment's hesitation, she agreed. I only have 20 minutes. I have to visit my husband's grave, and I have a doctor's appointment. She had plans to meet Vivien at the cemetery, and she couldn't be late. So let's make this quick. With that, she turned and walked out. An appointment? The word barely registered with Jason. He nodded, quickly gathered his things, and followed her. I'm coming too. Brooke chimed in, sticking to them like glue. She couldn't leave them alone together. What if baby fell for Clara again? Suit yourself, Jason muttered, too tired to argue. Kinsey was left standing there, bewildered. Hey, can someone find me some clothes? She felt like she tried to bust Brooke and ended up getting caught in the crossfire. Now she was the one being misunderstood. Her reputation was in tatters. Miss, here's a shirt the master took off yesterday. I've already washed it. Perhaps you can wear this for now, Mrs. Gable offered with an awkward smile, holding out one of Jason's shirts. I would never, Kinsey started to say, ready to throw the shirt back in her face. But then she looked closer. This shirt, it looked like something Jason used to wear. Yes, she was sure of it. It was the same style. Could it be? A sudden realization hit Kinsey like a lightning bolt. She understood everything. The similar builds of Jason and Mr. G. It all made sense. So that was it. Brooke was buying Mr. G clothes that looked like Jason's. She was turning him into Jason's replacement. Brooke Lynn, I can't believe you're that kind of person. Kinsey seethed, pulling out her phone and dialing a number. Elsewhere, in a Panamera, an assistant looked at Vivien's pale face with concern. Ma'am, I heard Miss Sterling went to Mr. G's house this morning. She should be back soon. Should we wait for her at the Sterling estate? Ever since she heard of Jason's death, Vivien hadn't been able to eat or sleep. She was a shadow of her former self. It was only because Clara had invited her to the cemetery today that she had managed to eat a little. The assistant was worried and trying to distract her. Vivien's heavy eyelids fluttered open. Hearing the name Mr. G, she frowned. What was she doing there? I heard she wanted to buy the old Miller family home. The assistant replied. Vivien's expression shifted, the corners of her eyes turning red. The family home? She really was devoted. Vivien had assumed that after only 3 months, Clara and Jason's relationship wouldn't be that deep. She was wrong. It figured. Her little shadow was the same everywhere he went. So easy to love, so hard to forget. Fine, we'll wait for her, Vivien said, rubbing her weary brow. She leaned against the window, and just then a Maybach drove past. Through the window, she caught a fleeting glimpse of a familiar figure, the man whose mask she had removed yesterday. What's he doing back here? Vivien's eyes narrowed. She hadn't realized Mr. G and Clara knew each other. What are they doing here so early in the morning? On impulse, Vivien gave the order. Follow them. She wanted to see for herself what kind of deal Clara could possibly have with this Mr. G. Following Clara's car, Jason soon arrived at a villa that was even larger than his old family home. It was situated in an exclusive neighborhood, not far from the Sterling estate, surrounded by beautifully landscaped properties. The moment he stepped out of the car, he was impressed. No wonder a villa here cost $50 million. It was high-end luxury, designed for the ultra-rich. Trading an old house for this was definitely a win. Ava, show Mr. G around, Clara said, noticing his satisfied expression. She handed a key to Ava. Yes, ma'am. Mr. G, if you'll follow me. Ava nodded and began the tour. Brooke trailed behind them, pouting. She had thought Clara's grand gift was something special. $50 million a villa? The basement she had prepared for Jason was bigger than this. As you can see, Mr. G, this is the fitness area, this is the lounge, and this is the main reception area, Ava explained. The villa has 4 floors, 3 above ground and a basement level, with a rooftop terrace. Each floor is over 2,000 square feet, with its own bathroom and bedroom, and there's an elevator. The upper floors are the living quarters, while the basement is for recreation. It's equipped with a billiards room, a gaming room, and other private entertainment spaces. The grounds are over 4,000 square feet, with a small hot spring and a garden. The high price of this development is due to the natural hot springs here. The environment is very restorative. Many of the older generation in New York bought property here. It's an excellent place to retire. Ava's tour was thorough. While the villa was small compared to the Sterling estate, it had everything one could want. It was a dream home that 99% of college graduates could never hope to afford. Jason was more than satisfied. Miss Sterling is very generous. Let's sign the contract. Of course, Mr. G. My boss has already prepared and signed it. You just need to add your signature, Ava said, producing the contract and a pen. Jason didn't hesitate, signing his name with a decisive flourish. From now on, this villa was his. A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. G, Clara said from the doorway. She took the contract, nodded at him, and turned to leave, not forgetting to shoot a final, icy glare at Brooke. Brooke, feeling a twinge of guilt, avoided her gaze. Glare all you want, she thought. When you find out the truth, you'll be the one regretting it. Seeing Jason still exploring the rooms, Brooke ran to catch up with Clara. Clara, I assume you don't want to be associated with Mr. G, right? So please, don't come here again. Don't disturb our life. She was worried that if Clara started dropping by, she would discover Jason's secret. What did you say? Clara stopped and turned, a look of disgust on her face. Brooke, you're insane. Do you think everyone is as fickle as you? I've said it before. From the moment I married Jason, I will be his wife until the day I die. I made that vow at our wedding, and it will never change. Do you think everyone is like you? Clara's eyes were red with unshed tears as she glared at Brooke. She had never given this Mr. G a second thought. Her heart belonged, and would always belong, to Jason. Hearing this, Brooke seemed to relax. You'd better mean that. You. Clara seethed. Man, we should go. After we visit the cemetery, we have the hospital appointment, Ava interjected, trying to calm her down. Clara took a deep breath, forcing her anger down. She looked at Brooke's defensive posture and sneered, her hand moving to her flat stomach. Brooke, I don't have time for you right now. But once my Jason's baby is born, you'd better watch your back. With that, she turned to leave. But Brooke froze. Her words echoed in her mind, and she couldn't quite process them. What did she just say? She's pregnant? With her and Jason's child? A roaring filled Brooke's ears. She stared blankly at Clara's retreating back. A voice cut through her shock from behind. Miss Sterling? What did you just say? Who's pregnant? Jason strode past Brooke, his brow furrowed, and caught up to Clara. Had he heard that right? Did she just say her baby? A cold sweat broke out on his back. A terrible feeling washed over him. No way. It couldn't be. Just that one night. Could it really have been that effective? But I don't even remember it. Brooke was just as stunned. She wanted to pull Jason back, but Clara had already turned around. My apologies for the confusion, Mr. G, she said, her eyes skipping over Jason to land on Brooke with a look of pure provocation. I was just saying that my friend's cat is pregnant. She's giving me one of the kittens when they're born. Clara's smile was flawless, not a hint of a lie in her expression. But in that moment, Brooke felt a chill run down her spine. She knew she hadn't misheard. Clara had said her and Jason's baby. Brooke felt as if a hand were squeezing her throat. She's pregnant? After just one night? With Jason's baby. What was she supposed to do now? What did that make her? If Clara had his child, Jason, being the kind man he was, would never abandon them. He would go back to Clara. What do I do? What do I do? No. He can never know. Brooke's mind raced, but Jason didn't notice her distress. Hearing that it was just a friend's cat, he let out a sigh of relief. Oh, I see. I thought it was something else. He thought he'd hit the jackpot on the first try. Thank God. He knew his body was in good shape, but he hadn't thought he was that unlucky. Hitting the jackpot on the first try was about as likely as winning the lottery. Something else? Clara raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips as she watched their reactions. Nothing, Jason said awkwardly, quickly changing the subject. I mean, that's great luck for you, Miss Sterling. For your friend to give you one of the kittens, she must be a very good person. Having a cat around might help lift your spirits, especially if you're not feeling well. As he spoke, Clara's mind drifted back to her wedding night with Jason. Lucky, she murmured, a distant look in her eyes. Her life had never felt lucky. She was born into wealth, but her mother died young, and her father wished she were dead. Only her grandparents had offered her a lifeline. She had fought for and won control of the Sterling family, but the cryotoxin meant she was living on borrowed time, isolated and watched by everyone. But was her life truly unlucky? She didn't think so. In her short life, she had met Jason, and now she was carrying their child. His arrival had been a splash of brilliant color in her gray world. It was just that meeting her seemed to have used up all of his luck. In the end, he had left her in the cruelest way possible. Thank you. A faint redness tinged Clara's eyes, but she managed a small smile. My friend. He was a very good person. A person who would never come back. I should go now, Clara said, her hand resting on her abdomen as she waved goodbye. She was in no mood to argue with Brooke any longer. What was that all about? Jason frowned, turning to Brooke. Her expression was even stranger than before, as if she'd seen a ghost. Her eyes were bloodshot, filled with a panicked, defeated look. Impossible. That's absolutely impossible, she muttered to herself. Jason's brow furrowed. Brooke? What are you talking about? Why was she reacting so strongly to a pregnant cat? And nothing. Baby, let's go inside. Brooke finally snapped out of it, grabbing Jason's arm and frantically pulling him into the house. She was terrified that if they stayed outside any longer, Clara would come back and say something else. Jason felt it then. Something was very wrong. After leaving the villa, Clara didn't get far before she saw the Panamera parked by the side of the road. Her brow tightened in annoyance. Didn't I tell her to wait for me at the cemetery? She had no desire to see Vivien. The only reason they had an alliance was their shared enemy, Julian Sue. But she would not tolerate being followed. And if she was being honest, between Brooke and Vivien, she disliked Vivien more. Brooke was just a hot-headed bulldog, easily provoked. Jason's feelings for her weren't that deep, at least not in Clara's opinion. But Vivien always felt dangerous, especially where Jason was concerned. After seeing Vivien, Clara had her investigated. While the details from that time were hard to uncover, the Sterling family's resources had unearthed a lot. After Jason disappeared at age 5, he ended up at the same children's home where Vivien grew up. Unlike the other children, Vivien had been there since birth. She had taken care of the younger, newly arrived Jason. They had spent 8 years together until, 5 years ago, Vivien had left for reasons unknown to join the Sue family. Vivien was Jason's true childhood sweetheart. Even Brooke, even Hannah Chun, they were just substitutes. Knowing this, Clara finally understood why Jason had been so reluctant to marry her, why he had insisted on their contract. His heart still belonged to Vivien. Even now, pregnant with his child, she felt a sense of danger whenever she saw the other woman. Ma'am, I don't know, Ava said, shaking her head. With a dark expression, Clara walked over to Vivien's car. Miss Sue, I wasn't aware you had a habit of stalking people. Have you seen enough? She stood by the car, her cold gaze fixed on Vivien inside. And you, Miss Sterling, aren't you the one who had me investigated? Vivien slowly lowered the window. She wore dark sunglasses, hiding the redness in her eyes. Clara was speechless. Vivien gestured to the empty seat beside her. Get in. I know about the cryotoxin. You shouldn't be out in the cold. She had no interest in arguing. She had followed them to the villa, but hadn't seen much, just Clara and Mr. G getting out of their cars, followed by another pretty girl. A girl who looked vaguely familiar. Clara got in, her face a coal mask. The silence in the car was thick enough to cut with a knife. Vivien broke it. That man from earlier, I've seen him. Who was the woman with him? The woman's features resembled her own, and the custom-made clothes she wore were not those of an ordinary assistant or bodyguard. You mean Brooke Lynn? Clara glanced at her, a sneer on her lips. You have sharp eyes, and a sharp mind. No wonder she had survived the Sue family's brutal discipline. She was certainly capable and cunning. Clara had no intention of hiding anything. One of Jason's girlfriends. Ex-girlfriend, to be precise, she said, her eyes fixed on Vivien, waiting for the reaction she knew would come. As expected, the slight smile on Vivien's lips froze. He started dating other women after I left? She whispered, her voice low. Her eyes began to redden. A woman who looked a little like her. Vivien's fists clenched, a heavy feeling settling in her chest. Jason, I thought you had forgotten me. She had been forced to leave him, had said such cruel things to hurt him. She thought he would hate her, resent her. But he hadn't. He had remembered her. He had even found a girl who looked like her. All this time, he had kept her in his heart. Vivien's emotions surged, her chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. Clara watched her, a bitter taste in her mouth. Don't get the wrong idea, Miss Sue, she said, forcing the words out, words she didn't even believe herself. I think my husband just has a type. It was probably just a fling. I heard he chased that Brooke girl for over a year, and look how quickly he dropped her. And she wasn't the only one he pursued over the years. But in the end, I was the one he married. I think you understand what that means. Even though Jason was gone, she couldn't stand to see Vivien like this. Whatever history they had, he was her husband now. Vivien's reaction infuriated her. Vivien just lowered her head, silent. After a long moment, she finally spoke again. Was she involved in Jason's death? She had looked into the accident. The reports mentioned someone crashing the wedding. She didn't know the details, but from the cold, dismissive way Clara said Brooke's name, she could guess who it was. Yes, Clara confirmed. To be precise, Jason died, saving her. Her own expression clouded over. And you saw her today. Jason is barely cold in his grave, and she's already latched onto Mr. Gee, she's an animal. Clara felt it was a waste. Jason had given his life for Brooke, and this was how she repaid him. If Clara wasn't currently focused on dealing with Julian Sue, and if she weren't pregnant, she would make Brooke pay with her life. Then she deserves to die, Vivien said, her own eyes darkening. She killed her Jason and thought she could just walk away? She looked up, her gaze meeting Clara's through the dark lenses of her sunglasses. She wanted to see for herself what kind of fickle woman Jason had died to protect. For the upcoming charity auction, let's invite Miss Lynn. I'd like to meet her. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, they understood each other perfectly. Done. Back at the new villa. Achoo. Brooke, trailing behind Jason, let out a sudden sneeze. She felt a chill run down her back, as if someone were talking about her. Jason, who was unpacking, clicked his tongue. Serves you right for your weird sleeping habits. You caught a cold. If she hadn't climbed into his bed, she wouldn't be like this. MMM. Brooke sniffled, feeling a wave of self-pity. She was already heartbroken over Clara's pregnancy, and now Jason's small bit of attention made her eyes well up. Baby, she whimpered, sidling up to him. She was about to launch into a full-blown pity party when she saw his expression, cold, with a hint of I see right through you. If you have so much energy, make yourself useful. Help me unpack. Can't you see I'm busy, he said, putting a stack of clothes into the closet. I'll help. Brooke quickly got to work, grabbing a piece of clothing. As she pulled it out, a very small item of clothing came with it. What's this? She frowned, spreading the small pair of black boxer briefs out on the bed. The more she looked, the redder her face became. Hey, I asked you to unpack, not pull out my underwear. Jason exploded, seeing the black fabric. Did this woman have no shame? Brooke bit her lip, her cheeks burning. But, baby, you're not that big, are you? Why is the size so large? She pointed at the XXXL tag, confused. They look so loose. Weren't they uncomfortable? None of your business, Jason coughed, his own face turning red at her innocent but direct question. He didn't want to wear XXXL, but he wanted to have a word with the designers who made men's underwear so ridiculously tight. He had no choice but to size up. Fine, whatever, Brooke muttered, turning back to the clothes. Outside, a light rain began to fall. Inside, the warm lights cast a cozy glow as evening approached. As Brooke hung up the clothes, her earlier gloom began to lift. She felt like a wife, taking care of her husband's things. The feeling was blissful. It was like they were a real family. She stole a glance at Jason's back, her eyes softening. Baby, I hope we could be this happy together forever, she whispered, and in a moment when he wasn't looking, she tucked the boxer briefs away. Baby likes this brand, this material. I'll have my company open a factory, design a custom line, and send them to him. Brooke, what are you grinning about over there? Jason sensed something and shot her a suspicious look. Seeing nothing amiss, he turned back and made a call to Mrs. Gable. Yes, this is the new address. If the commute is too much, you can move in here. I'll call the moving service for my things. You can come with them and bring my bedding. Yes, that's right. After a few more instructions, he hung up and saw Brooke still humming to herself, obsessively folding a shirt she had already folded 5 times. His mouth twitched. He pulled out a first aid kit to treat his wound. It wasn't a minor injury, but it had been stitched up and didn't usually bother him. After all the commotion today, however, it was inflamed. A thin layer of sweat slicked his skin from the pain. Since Brooke already knew who he was, he didn't bother hiding it. He turned his back to her and pulled off his shirt. Hiss! The movement pulled at his stitches, and a pained grunt escaped his lips. Brooke, who was humming, heard the sound and looked up. She saw his back, a landscape of hard, defined muscle, illuminated by the warm light. His healthy, tan skin seemed to radiate masculinity. Her eyes widened, and she unconsciously swallowed. A fire ignited in her cheeks. Baby, what are you doing? He was taking his shirt off in front of her. Was he thinking about? Brooke bit her lip, a shy expression spreading across her face. Isn't this a little too fast? But then she thought of Clara and her baby, and a sense of urgency gripped her. Maybe now wasn't a bad time, but with his injury, would it affect his performance? Hey, Brooke, what are you thinking about? Jason saw her blushing face and knew her mind was going to strange places. He quickly cut her off. Hand me the gauze from the first aid kit. Gauze? Brooke blinked. So they weren't doing that? What did he need gauze for? But when she brought it over and saw him begin to wrap the wound on his shoulder, her face flushed with embarrassment. You were just changing your dressing. She had totally gotten the wrong idea. She thought, what else would I be doing? Jason gave her a strange look. You said you wanted my forgiveness, right? Well, I'm hungry, and I can't cook with this injury. Go make me a bowl of noodles. It seemed like a reasonable request. Okay, Brooke said cheerfully, skipping to the kitchen. Of course she would take care of her boyfriend. But as Jason watched her go, a sense of dread washed over him. This was the woman who could turn a blueberry pie the color of curry. It was probably better not to risk it. I have instant noodles. Just make those instead, he said, pulling 2 packs of Shin Ramyun from his suitcase. Surely she couldn't mess that up. What's this? Brooke came out of the kitchen, tilting her head at the packages. She'd never even been in a kitchen at home. The maids did everything, even peeling her hard-boiled eggs. She'd never seen anything like this before. Just follow the instructions on the package, Jason said, a headache forming. He lay down on the bed, feeling a wave of exhaustion. My head's a little dizzy. I'm going to rest. Just wake me when it's ready. The painkillers and antibiotics were making him drowsy, and his body ached. He suspected he was running a fever. He closed his eyes and drifted off. Okay, Brooke replied brightly. She found a tutorial online and carefully began to cook the noodles, calling her bodyguard to bring over 2 whole cases of eggs and sausages to add in. At the Sterling family cemetery, Clara stood before Jason's gravestone. After burning the last of the ceremonial money, she wiped her tears and allowed Ava to help her leave. Vivien remained seated, staring blankly at the grave, her eyes following Clara until she was gone. Only then did Vivien pull out her locket, her gaze dark, investigate the relationship between that Mr. G. Brooklyn and Clara, she told her assistant. She refused to believe a complete stranger would get so entangled in all of this. Something was going on. Yes, ma'am, the assistant replied. Outside the cemetery, Clara headed straight for Midtown General Hospital to see Dr. Luo, Kinsey's cousin. The fewer people who knew about her pregnancy, the better. Miss Sterling, good to see you again. We're ready for your checkup. Please come in, Dr. Luo greeted her warmly, though he looked a bit frazzled. He handed Clara and Ava face masks. It's flu season. With your condition, it's best to be careful. Clara and Ava saw the long lines of patients nearby and thought nothing of it. It was a rainy season, colds were common. Meanwhile, back at the villa, Jason's forehead was burning hot. Baby, the noodles are ready, Brooke announced proudly. She had burned her hands in several places, but the fragrant smell of the Shin Ramyun made it all worth it. It was the first time she had ever cooked something that smelled so good. It wasn't burnt or black. Ready. Jason's voice was groggy as he sat up. He saw Brooke's expectant face as she held out a steaming bowl of ramen, complete with egg and sausage, and felt a flicker of warmth. I'm surprised you went to all this trouble. He had expected her to just add hot water. Thanks, he said, taking a careful bite. The next second, a wave of nausea hit him. He lurched forward, vomiting violently, feeling utterly drained and dizzy. Brooke stared in disbelief. Is it that bad? She had tasted it, and it was delicious. Baby, why is your face so red? She finally noticed something was wrong. She touched his forehead and immediately recoiled. You're burning up. Baby, are you running a fever? She cried, her face filled with panic. It must be the wound. An infection. Jason gritted his teeth, a dull, throbbing pain splitting his head. His voice was hoarse. Call someone. Take me. To the hospital. He thought he could just tough it out at home, like he always did, but maybe it was the flu going around. Okay, I'm calling right now. Brooke fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she called her bodyguards. Soon, they were rushing Jason to the car, Brooke anxiously trying to comfort him all the way to Midtown General. But the hospital was overflowing. The line for the ER stretched down the hall. No one recognized Brooke, and she didn't want to call Kinsey. They were stuck. Is it our turn yet? Jason was on the verge of passing out. Soon, Brooke's eyes filled with tears of frustration. She glared at her bodyguards. Are you all useless? Find someone. Do something. Jason was hurt because of her. She couldn't let anything else happen to him. Yes, one of them stammered. Just then, Clara, having just finished her appointment, saw the commotion. What is Brooklyn doing? She murmured, frowning as she saw the cluster of bodyguards surrounding a man. It looks like that, mister. G has a fever, Ava said. Clara's frown deepened. Let's go see. Something about the man's pained expression pulled her forward. Clara? You. Brooke saw her approaching. What do you want? She asked, instinctively shielding Jason. Clara ignored her, her gaze fixed on the man. Mister. G. I assume your fever is due to the recent flu outbreak. Brooke said nothing. Clara gave a small, humorless laugh. She looked at Jason, whose eyes were closed, and her own gaze grew intense. Without his eyes, the resemblance was less striking, but there was still something undeniably familiar about him. She felt a strange, inexplicable pull, a desire to be near him, to watch his every move. Am I just exhausted lately? She wondered, her heart giving a sudden, jarring thud. She quickly looked away. Why did this man make her heart race with a panicked, uncomfortable rhythm? It had to be the exhaustion. If you don't want him to burn up or suffer brain damage, follow me, Clara said, her face flushing as she turned to hide her strange reaction. She walked towards Dr. Luo's office. Ma'am, should we follow her? A bodyguard asked. Brooke hesitated, but one look at Jason, who was now barely conscious, made up her mind. Follow her. She couldn't let her pride get in the way of his treatment. They followed Clara to Dr. Luo's office. When the doctor saw Jason's condition, he immediately grew angry. What kind of girlfriend are you? You wait until he's this sick to bring him in? Get his meds now. He barked at nurse before turning his glare on Brooke. Me? Brooke was stunned by his outburst. The word girlfriend echoed in her mind, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yes, it's my fault. Despite the situation, a small smile tugged at her lips. As his girlfriend, I've been completely irresponsible. Clara, who was standing nearby, heard her muttering and snorted. Shameless. Dr. Luo didn't notice. Thankfully, you got him here in time. The medication should bring the fever down. However, there are no empty rooms. The best we can do is a bed in the hallway. Before he could finish, Clara spoke up. That won't be necessary. My room has 2 beds. If he has nowhere else to go, he can stay with me. Her doctor had advised her to stay for observation due to her condition. She didn't need the whole room. Besides, this way, she could keep an eye on Mr. G. She had a feeling he was hiding something. Brooke's expression was conflicted. She didn't want Jason anywhere near Clara, but she didn't want him in a hallway either. Before she could protest, Clara stepped forward and pulled the mask from Jason's face. I don't understand why you always wear this thing indoors, Mr. G, she said, her voice cool. She wanted to see the face he was hiding. Clara. Brooke's heart leaped into her throat. She tried to stop her, but it was too late. The mask came off, revealing a face with burned scars covering one side. It was a complete stranger's face. Clara froze, the mask slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. Brooke was equally stunned. She knew it was Jason, but how had his face changed like this? Clara was just as confused. Had she been wrong? Was he not hiding anything after all? Was the mask just to cover his scars? Excuse me. We need to get him to his room, Dr. Luo said, breaking the awkward silence. Jason was hooked up to an 4 and moved to a VIP room. Brooke followed, never leaving his side, and arranged for a variety of restorative foods to be delivered. Clara sat on the adjacent bed, watching the whole performance, her expression growing colder by the minute. She remembered her investigation had revealed that Jason had chased Brooke relentlessly, and she had shown no interest. Now, she was fawning over this man. Brooke, does your future husband know you're acting like this with another man? She couldn't resist saying. Brooke's face darkened. She glanced nervously at the bed, relieved to see Jason was still asleep. That's none of your business. I never said I was marrying Julian Sue. That dog doesn't deserve me. If it weren't for Julian, her family wouldn't have canceled her engagement to Mr. G. It was all his fault. On the bed, Jason was slowly waking up from medication. His eyelids felt heavy, but before he could open them, he heard the two women arguing. Deserve you or not, you're still going to marry him, aren't you? Clara's voice. Jason, who had been about to open his eyes, squeezed them shut. What is this demonist doing here? And Brooke is supposed to marry that bastard Julian Sue? He frowned, subconsciously touching the makeup on his face. The mask was gone, but the disguise was still intact. He breathed a silent sigh of relief. But the next words out of Brooke's mouth hit him like a lightning strike. Clara, don't talk to me about Julian Sue. You should focus on taking care of yourself and giving birth to that baby in your belly, Brooke said coldly. As far as I know, your cryotoxin makes it unsuitable for you to carry a child, right? She would never harm Jason's baby. It was his bloodline. Looking at Clara's stomach, she felt a pang of longing. Jason's baby. It must be as cute as he was. If Jason knew Clara was pregnant, they would definitely get back together. He was just that kind of person. If only it were me who was pregnant, Brooke thought, her eyes reddening. Clara's expression flickered with worry before she smiled. Don't you worry. The entire sterling fortune will ensure that my and Jason's two babies are born safely. She caressed her stomach, her smile a mix of happiness and provocation. Brooke's face went slack. What did you say? Two. She had to have misheard. Two. Clara's next words sent her heart plummeting into an icy abyss. That's right. The doctor said I'm carrying two babies. Twins. Either identical or fraternal. It's the best gift Jason ever gave me. A gift from heaven. Clara's hand rested gently on her stomach, her normally cold face transformed by a soft, maternal glow. On the bed, the man pretending to be asleep and the woman sitting beside him were both utterly shocked. You. Brooke stared at Clara's triumphant face, her own eyes turning red with a mix of anger and despair. A wave of fear washed over her. She glanced at the bed. Thankfully, he was still asleep. If he woke up and found out Clara was having his twins, Brooke knew she would lose him for good. Little did she know, a tidal wave was crashing through Jason's mind. Clara is pregnant. For real. And with two of them. It wasn't her cat. It was her. This couldn't be happening. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to will himself back to sleep, but the dull throb in his shoulder confirmed it. This was real. How was this possible? Just one night? Was his quality control really that good? All that potential he'd wasted over the years. If he had donated it, he could have been rich. Wrong train of thought. He needed to focus. Silently, Jason turned his head, trying to get a look at Clara. The movement alerted Brooke. Baby, you're awake, she exclaimed, her eyes filling with tears of relief. How do you feel? Does it still hurt? Jason felt a pang of awkwardness at her intense display. I'm fine. From her bed, Clara rolled her eyes. She couldn't stand Brooke's theatrics, as if there were no other men in the world. But business was business. Brooke, you're Mr. G has a press conference tomorrow morning. I assume you'll be there, she said, cutting through the drama. Brooke blinked. A press conference? For me? For my house? She had completely missed Clara's sarcasm. She had no idea Jason was holding a press conference. The news was a pleasant surprise. Baby, you're having a press conference? Why didn't you tell me? I want to go, she pouted, leaning against him. What would you go for? Jason sighed, unable to fight her. Fine, do whatever you want. Right now, he only had one thing on his mind. Was Clara really pregnant, or was she just trying to provoke Brooke? And what was she planning to do with the child? Or children? Theoretically, since the father was dead, shouldn't she terminate the pregnancy? But the thought of two innocent lives being lost, it twisted his gut. Having grown up an orphan, he knew the pain of being abandoned. He never wanted to become the kind of parent he had always hated. But a child with Clara, it wasn't what he had wanted. Thank you, baby. Brooke, oblivious to his inner turmoil, was ecstatic. Just then, one of her bodyguards appeared. Miss, the dinner you asked us to prepare for Mr. G is ready. Would you like to check it? Brooke shot a wary glance at Clara, then decided to go. Baby, you wait here. I'll be right back. Her baby had lost so much blood. He needed to eat well. She had to make sure everything was perfect. Okay, Jason mumbled. As she left, he lay back on the bed. After a moment, he couldn't stop himself from turning his hesitant gaze towards Clara. Meanwhile, at the Sterling estate, where's Jason's body buried? Bianca, Sterling asked, her voice hollow as she stared out the window. That. The bodyguard hesitated. Miss, the master said you're not to upset yourself. Speak. The bodyguard flinched at her icy tone and lowered his head. The young master. He's buried in the Sterling family cemetery. The family cemetery? She whispered. Take me to him. Without waiting for a reply, she walked out. Hey, miss. The bodyguard scrambled to follow her. A few minutes later, Bianca stood outside the cemetery gates, but she couldn't bring herself to go in. She couldn't accept that her brother was gone. She couldn't bear to see his grave. As she stood there, letting the cold rain soak her pajamas, another figure appeared beside her. "Bianca, you're here to see him too." It was Kinsey, holding an umbrella over both their heads. "It's none of your business," Bianca said without looking at her, her voice like shards of glass. "You?" Kinsey was taken aback. No wonder she was Clara's niece. They were cut from the same miserable cloth. She knew of Bianca from school, but they had never spoken. But now, after seeing Brooke's despicable behavior, she knew she had to find someone to teach her a lesson. Bianca had already started walking into the cemetery. "Don't you want to know how Jason died?" Kinsey called out, desperate. Bianca stopped, her small face turning a terrifying shade of gray in the dim light. "What did you say?" Kinsey was startled by her expression, but she pressed on. "Jason gave his life to save her, and now she's using another man as his replacement. It's disgusting. I think we have to teach her a lesson." 3 minutes later, Kinsey had told her everything, or what she believed to be everything. With every word, Bianca's face grew darker. "A lesson," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "That's not enough. Her brother was dead. That old woman, Brooke Lynn, would have to pay with her life. Thank you for telling me this. You can go now. I'll handle it. I'll send her to see my brother myself. She can apologize to him in person." Bianca was the most ruthless of them all, the most twisted, the most unhinged, a product of her life experiences. She was the type of person who believed that if you dared to harm a single hair on her brother's head, you die. "You heard me," Bianca said, her voice dropping to a near whisper as she stepped into the cemetery. Kinsey followed, a growing unease crawling up her spine. The way Bianca spoke, there was a dangerous edge to it, a simmering rage. She was starting to get scared. "Look, it's not entirely her fault," Kinsey began, trying to defuse the situation, but Bianca had already stopped in front of Jason Miller's headstone. Her eyes narrowed at the small object resting on the polished granite. "What's this?" She reached out and picked up a silver locket. She clicked it open. Inside was a photo of a teenage girl, her smile gentle and beautiful. Her features bore a striking resemblance to Brooke Lynn. About 40%, Bianca calculated. For a moment, Bianca's expression went blank. Then, as understanding dawned, she felt the blood in her veins turn to ice as a hot rage flooded her mind. "Brooke Lynn, you dare come here? You dare to even look at my brother's grave?" Her fingers tightened around the locket, and with a guttural cry, she smashed it against the headstone. The silver casing shattered, sharp fragments digging into her palm. Dark, crimson blood welled up, dripping onto the stone. Her pretty eyes, usually so bright, turned shadowy and grim. "Brooke Lynn, I'm going to kill her." Ahem. Kinsey flinched, shrinking back. A wave of regret washed over her. This Bianca Sterling. She seemed genuinely unhinged. Could she actually try to kill Brooke? As much as Kinsey was annoyed with Brooke's actions, she didn't want her dead. That wouldn't happen, right? Brooke had bodyguards. She tried to reassure herself, but the anxiety wouldn't fade. Bianca turned to her own bodyguard, her voice cold and clipped. "Find Brooke Lynn's location. I want her entire schedule for tomorrow, down to the minute." Whatever Kinsey might have said died on her lips. It was too late. Within minutes, the bodyguard returned with the information. Brooke would be attending a press conference the next day. Back at Midtown General Hospital, Jason lay in his bed, covertly watching Clara in the adjacent one. "Excuse me, Miss Sterling," he began, but the sound of the door opening cut him off. "Oh, Clara, darling, you said the last soup I brought was too rich, so Grandma made you something new today." The matriarch beamed, bustling in with 2 insulated food containers. "I've got spicy chicken and a lovely fish stew. See which one you'd like." The words died in Jason's throat. "Thank you, Grandma." Clara's face lit up at the sight of her grandmother, and she sat up. "You really don't have to do all this yourself. But it looks delicious," she added, peering into the containers as her grandmother set them out. She picked up a pair of chopsticks. Normally, she barely ate proper meals, but for some reason, since the pregnancy, her appetite had returned with a vengeance. She craved sour and spicy foods. Looking at the dishes her grandmother had brought, she felt a genuine pang of hunger. Jason watched from his bed, unable to stay silent any longer. "Miss Sterling, are you pregnant?" The moment the words left his mouth, 2 pairs of eyes, Clara's and her grandmother's, snapped toward him, sharp and cold as ice. "Don't worry," Jason said quickly, raising a hand. "I overheard you talking with Brooke Lynn earlier." As they stared at him, their expressions a mixture of suspicion and confusion, he feigned a casual curiosity. "But I remember hearing that your husband passed away not long ago. What are your plans for the children?" He watched Clara's face carefully. I don't see how that's any of your business, mister. Gee, Clara shot back, her face instantly frosting over. She hadn't wanted anyone to know. She couldn't believe this man had been pretending to be asleep. Jason was momentarily speechless. Luckily, the matriarch stepped in. Please don't mind her, mister. Gee, Claire's always been like this. We're keeping the pregnancy quiet for now. Her tone was much warmer. Clara intends to see this through and have the babies, so the fewer wolves out there who know, the better. We'd appreciate it if you could keep this to yourself. Jason's heart skipped a beat. He managed an awkward smile. Of course, ma'am. You have my word. He'd always liked the old woman, and he understood the stakes better than anyone. He would never leak this. But he was stunned. Clara was actually going to have the babies. But, Miss Sterling, I remember hearing you weren't in the best of health. Are you sure about this? She was carrying the cryotoxin. This was a high-risk pregnancy. He had faked his own death to protect her, and she was still stubbornly going through with this? Didn't she realize it could drain what little strength she had left? It could kill her. Jason's voice was more intense than he intended. Clara's gaze sharpened, turning from cold to suspicious. You seem very concerned about me. She didn't recall being that close with Mr. G. Why was he acting more stressed about this than she was? Jason faltered. He supposed he didn't really have the right to be concerned. A strange frustration pricked at him. Just then a nurse walked in. Miss Sterling, it's time for your checkup. She glanced at Jason. The father can come in and help. Me? Jason blinked, not processing the words. The nurse rolled her eyes. Who else? You're the father, the husband. Is it too much to ask you to help an expectant mother? Her voice was stern. Don't tell me you're going to shirk that responsibility, too. She'd seen too many fathers playing games on their phones while their partners were in labor. Not on her watch. Before he could protest, she took Clara's hand and placed it firmly in his. Support her. Right. Jason, caught completely off guard, could only comply. Under Clara's astonished gaze, he helped her up and followed her into the examination room. The matriarch, still holding the food containers, stood frozen in place. What in the world is happening? But seeing that Clara didn't object, she just shrugged and decided to let play out. Inside the room, the nurse barked orders at Jason, having him run back and forth, grabbing this and that. It was obvious she was targeting him, ignoring the perfectly capable bodyguards standing nearby. But every time he wanted to argue, the thought that he was the father silenced him. Clara watched the whole spectacle with a frown, utterly bewildered. At first, she'd wanted to send him away, but watching his back as he hurried around the room, she was struck by an unnerving sense of familiarity. He reminded her so much of Jason. Because of that resemblance, for a fleeting moment, she could almost believe Jason was still alive, bustling about, preparing for their baby's checkup. Thinking this, Clara's eyes began to sting, and she didn't say another word. Finally, after Jason had completed his whirlwind of tasks, he sat down on a stool next to Clara's bed, sweating slightly. He leaned forward, staring intently at the blurry, black and white images taking shape on the ultrasound monitor. Before seeing the children, Jason's feelings had been a tangled mess. Clara wasn't the wife he'd truly wanted, and these weren't the children he'd planned for. But as he stared at the two tiny, flickering shapes on the screen, his heart melted. They were only 3 months along, not fully formed, just faint outlines in the darkness. Yet in that moment he felt an undeniable, tender connection of blood and kinship. These were his children, 2 tiny new lives. He had made this happen. This was the consequence of his actions, and he had to take responsibility. Besides, he'd always liked kids. More than anything, he didn't want his own children to end up like him, abandoned by their parents before they even had a chance to see the world. In that instant, Jason made his decision. His gaze hardened with resolve. He would make sure these children were born. Even if Clara's time was running out, even if their marriage was a contract he'd been forced into, these were his children. He just hadn't expected to become a father at 18. Ahem, doctor, are the babies healthy? Jason asked, his eyes glued to the monitor. Clara's health isn't great. Will childbirth affect her badly? He was so focused that he didn't notice Clara staring at him, her expression baffled. Why was this Mr. G more nervous about her pregnancy than she was? It was as if he really were the father. Wait a minute. The father? A sudden, sharp suspicion pierced through Clara's thoughts. Mr. G, I don't recall us being particularly close. Why are you so invested in my babies? Her gaze, sharp as a scalpel, sliced toward him. He was still craning his neck, looking at the screen with an expression of pure, unadulterated tenderness. Something was wrong. 70% of this was very, very wrong. I just happen to like children, Jason stammered, feeling a flush of guilt. He cleared his throat and tried to look casual. But Clara wasn't so easily fooled. His expression, combined with the rice cooker, the home-cooked meal, and now this performance at her appointment. It all clicked. Remembering what her grandmother had said, she had a sudden, startling revelation. Could it be? This Mr. G. Had he actually fallen for her? Did he want to be the father to her children? Mr. G, she said, her voice dropping 10 degrees. I suggest you get rid of any inappropriate ideas you might be having. I will never marry another man as long as I live. Huh. Jason thought he'd misheard. She wasn't suspicious of his identity. She thought he had a crush on her? What kind of bizarre logic was that? Miss Sterling, rest assured, I did have a favorable impression of you, but it was purely professional. Jason recovered quickly. Since she'd handed him an excuse, he might as well use it. I just saw that you were a single woman going through a checkup alone. It looked difficult, so I thought I'd lend a hand. That's all. Clara's expression softened slightly. As long as you understand. The nurse, who had been observing the whole exchange, finally pieced it together. No wonder the guy had looked so clueless earlier. He was trying to become the stepdad, but hadn't even won the girl over yet. She suppressed a grin. Sir, while this young lady's health is delicate, it won't affect the fetuses, she said, giving Jason a pointed look. Both babies are perfectly fine right now. As long as the mother eats and rests on schedule and avoids stress, everything should be okay. She was practically handing him an instruction manual. All right, the exam is over. Sir, you could put the lady's shoes on and help her out. If this guy was still too dense to get it, he really was going to lose his shot at being stepdad. What? Me? Jason was still staring at the ultrasound report. He looked up, startled. His eyes instinctively fell to Clara's pale, delicate feet, then to the stone-faced male bodyguards standing nearby. Ahem, is that appropriate? He wasn't her legitimate husband, after all. I don't think that a good idea. As he tried to demur, Clara's face hardened. That won't be necessary. I can do it myself. She said it, but because of the pregnancy, she was wearing flat, lace-up shoes. Bending over was already becoming difficult. The nurse shot Jason a look of pure exasperation. Useless man. Can't you see she's having trouble? Air. Jason hesitated, watching Clara struggle with her laces. He couldn't stand it. Bending down, he reached for a shoe. Let me help. He kept his head low, trying to hide the blush creeping up his neck as he began to tie the lace. Clara's expression turned to ice. Seeing the man's head bowed, the line of his shoulders so painfully similar to Jason's, a sudden, inexplicable anger flared within her. I said no, she snapped, yanking her foot back. Her eyes, however, betrayed a flicker of panic. Who did he think he was? Just because he looked a little like Jason, did he think he had the right to get close to her? Now she finally understood why that lunatic Brooke was so fixated on this Mr. G. It was because he looked so much like Jason. Brooke was using him as a substitute, but she couldn't do that. She wouldn't. She only loved Jason. With a dark expression, Clara pushed Jason away and stormed toward the door. But because her shoelace was still untied, she stumbled. Watch out. Jason reacted instantly, catching her. Her whole body, soft and surprisingly light, fell against his chest. Her cool, distant scent, that familiar, subtle fragrance of roses, enveloped him, and for a second, he was transported back to their wedding night, to all the small moments they had shared at the Sterling estate. Staring down at Clara's flushed face, he felt his throat go dry. He'd never noticed before how slender her waist was, how perfectly she fit in his arms. It was a feeling that made him reluctant to let go. Even the scent of roses seemed sweeter, more intoxicating than he remembered. His hand, resting on the small of her back, didn't move. It lingered, savoring the moment. The young nurse watched, practically vibrating with glee. Yes, they're about to kiss. Go for it. Don't chicken out now. Just then, Brooke, having chosen a selection of takeout for dinner, returned to the hospital floor. She couldn't find Jason anywhere. When someone told her he'd gone to the prenatal exam room, the box in her hands crashed to the floor. He knew. He knew about Clara's pregnancy. He knows everything. Would he still forgive her? Would he ever like her again? Was there any hope for them at all? Brooke stood frozen, her eyes glazing over as tears began to well. She couldn't stop herself. Ignoring the matriarch's surprised stare, she ran toward the exam room. She arrived just in time to see Jason holding Clara. From behind, they looked like they were glued together, wrapped up in each other. Jason's hands were clasped firmly around Clara's waist, an image of intimacy and warmth. They looked like a pair of newlyweds, basking in the happy news of their 2 babies. And in that unguarded moment, she saw a flicker of genuine tenderness in Jason's eyes. In that instant, Brooke's heart shattered. She had chased him for a solid year, and only once, when he was drunk and mumbling another woman's name, had she seen that expression on his face. Back then, she couldn't even be sure if that look of deep affection was meant for her. But now, he was holding Clara, and there it was, clear as day. Brooke was forced to face a devastating truth. Maybe Jason was actually, slowly, falling in love with Clara. So where did that leave her? They were a happy, perfect family. Did she even stand a chance anymore? Inside the exam room, Jason was just as stunned. He could feel Clara's heartbeat, a rapid, frantic drumming against his chest. Wait, or was that his own? He winced. This felt like walking into a minefield. His thoughts were shattered when he saw the murderous glint in Clara's eyes. "You bastard!" she hissed, and a split second later, a hand came flying toward his face. "You bastard!" Jason, whose body had been conditioned to dodge 9 out of 10 surprise attacks, reacted on pure instinct. His pupils contracted, and he twisted away. The slap only grazed his cheek, but it still stung. Clara's eyes widened in shock. That dodge, why did it feel so familiar? "Miss Sterling, what are you doing? I was helping you. You can't just attack people." Jason, worried she might try again, quickly grabbed her arm. "Oof." Clara glared at him, her face beet red. She ripped her arm away, stormed out, and slammed the door behind her. "Oof." The nurses sighed in collective disappointment. "What a wimp," one of them muttered. "He didn't even try for a kiss." Their fun was over. "What a wimp. He didn't even try for a kiss. You think it's so easy? You try it." Jason shot them a cold glare. Bunch of gossips. Besides, he wasn't a wimp. He was just being smart. With a dark expression, Jason looked down and noticed Clara's shoe was still on the floor. She must have been so angry she'd run off without it. He sighed, bent down to pick it up, and looked up to see Brooke standing a short distance away. Her beautiful face was streaked with tears, her eyes bloodshot and fixed on him. What are you doing here?" he stammered. The way she was staring at him made him feel like he'd been caught doing something wrong. Did she see? She couldn't have, right? He knew about her bipolar disorder. If she'd seen that, she would have had a full-blown episode right here in the hospital. But to his surprise, while her chest heaved and she bit her lip so hard it could have bled, all the violent rage in her eyes seemed to recede like a tide the moment she saw him. All that remained was a profound sense of hurt and loss. I didn't see you in the room, so I came to find you." She wiped her tears away, forcing a smile, choosing to deceive herself. She was terrified that if she confronted him, if they fought, she might never see him again. He would hate her even more, and like Clara even more. Seeing his frown, she panicked. You must be hungry, right? I got you lots of food, all your favorites." Her eyes were still red as she frantically searched for the dinner box, only to remember it had fallen. She fumbled in her purse and pulled out a smaller container. "And there's blueberry pie. I didn't make this one, so it has to be good. Do you want to try some?" Tears streamed down her face as she held out the pie, like a precious offering. No matter how hard she tried to pretend, her voice was choked with unshed sobs. She no longer had the courage to be willful. She was terrified of losing him. As long as she didn't say anything, they could go back to how things were. "Right, Brooke." Jason looked at her, at the way she struggled to speak around the injury to her neck. His heart softened. This time, he didn't wipe her tears away. He was afraid she'd misunderstand again. He needed to be clear. "Brooke, whatever was between us. It was over a long time ago." "Babe, what are you talking about? We're just on a break. We never broke up," she cried. "Come on, eat. The blueberry pie will get cold. And I got your favorite seafood congee." She stopped, her face falling. "Oh, right, I forgot. You can't have seafood when you're sick. We can eat something else, okay?" It was as if she knew what he was about to say next. Like a stubborn child, she kept her head down, talking to herself, refusing to accept his words. Jason's frustration grew. "Brooke, would you just listen to me? It's really over between us. I know you're a good person, but a relationship can't be built on one person forcing it and the other giving in. Do you understand? Can't we just be friends? Isn't that better?" He could see it. Brooke wasn't inherently a bad person. She was like a blank slate, her isolation from a young age making her deeply lonely. Her bipolar disorder wasn't something she could control, but his words now were like knives twisting in her heart. "Stop talking, please. It's not over." It was never over, she suddenly shrieked, her eyes red and raw, as if every defense she had been torn away. She was sobbing now. "Babe, I don't want to hear you say that. Please, don't ever say that again, okay? I will never, ever let you leave me." Her eyes, filled with a desperate, tragic love, took on a sick, manic gleam that was terrifying. "If you try to leave, the only way that happens is if we die together." The words on the tip of Jason's tongue died. He'd forgotten. This woman was a lunatic, and you can't reason with a lunatic. The nurse watched from a distance, amazed. One leaves, another arrives. As the head nurse at a major downtown hospital, she remembered this Miss Lynn. A regular customer, either checking herself in for a manic episode or sending someone else to the ER, followed by a check to cover the sky-high medical bills. She took back what she'd thought about Jason being a wimp. This kid had balls of steel. Okay. Let's not talk about this right now. Let's just eat, all right? Jason, seeing Brooke on the verge of exploding, quickly took the blueberry pie he'd just refused. Damn it, never dating a Yandera again. MHM. Hearing his concession, Brooke's expression softened back to one of pure, wounded misery. MHM. Then you promise you won't say things like that again. Okay, I won't. Let's just go back and eat, all right? Jason sighed, completely resigned. When someone's go-to threat was a murder-suicide pact, what choice did he have? He finally managed to calm the woman he'd made cry, half dragging, half coaxing her back to the hospital room. A group of nurses watched them go, shaking their heads. Wasn't he just with Miss Sterling? One whispered. And now he's all over Miss Lynn? Kids these days. Shakespeare couldn't write this much drama. Wasn't he just with Miss Sterling? And now he's all over Miss Lynn? Kids these days. Shakespeare couldn't write this much drama. When Jason and Brooke got back to the room, Clara was already turned away from them, feigning sleep. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Babe, try this. Brooke had transformed, hovering over Jason with devoted attention, not leaving his side until he'd finished eating. Then she grabbed a spare blanket and laid down on the visitor's cot next to his bed, her eyes fixed on him, as if she were afraid he'd vanish. It was so unnerving that Jason barely slept a wink, terrified that if he closed his eyes, he'd wake up to find her in his bed. The next morning, when he finally awoke, it was past 10. He glanced over. Brooke was fast asleep, her face smushed into the pillow, a tiny trail of drool at the corner of her mouth. Clara's bed was empty. She was long gone. An idea sparked in Jason's mind. He looked away from Brooke. Sprite, what's the status of the press conference arrangements? He murmured, activating the chip behind his ear. Sprite's voice came through, thick with a yawn. All set. All set. Good, Jason nodded. Evan Sterling's mother is in this hospital too, right? Send me her room number. Okay. The information came through a moment later. Jason glanced at it, then carefully slipped out of bed, changed his clothes, and headed down one floor to the room. Evan's mother hadn't been seriously injured from her fall down the stairs, just a few stitches. But rumor had it that Evan had been cold and distant, not even visiting her once during her stay. She was being cared for by a single nursing aide. Jason saw it all through the small window in her door. He figured Evan must have found out about his mother's affair with Wong, the butler. Well, it was time to make things even clearer. Sprite, send a message to Wong from Evan's mother's phone. Say she misses him. Sprite, send a message to Wong from Evan's mother's phone. Say she misses him. A wicked smile spread across Jason's face as he looked at the DNA results and other information he'd collected. And don't forget to install a camera in the room. It will be the perfect little film to premiere at the press conference. His work done, Jason turned and saw Brooke frantically searching for him in the crowded hallway. When she spotted him, her red-rimmed eyes filled with tears. Babe, why didn't you wake me when you got up? Her eyes were wide with a possessive panic. You weren't trying to sneak out and leave me, were you? Of course not, Brooke, Jason said, startled by the wildness in her eyes. The lie came easily. I figured you'd be hungry when you woke up, so I was going to grab some breakfast from the cafe downstairs. Really? She asked, her voice laced with suspicion. Of course, he said, his tone soothing. And since you're up and ready, we can get something to eat and head straight to the press conference. He started guiding her toward the elevators. Brooke was still worried about his injuries, but she figured a press conference wouldn't be too strenuous. They could go and come right back. Okay, good, she nodded. Then, a calculating glint appeared in her eyes. Babe, do you like it here in New York? I bought an estate just outside the city. Why don't we go check it out after the conference? If you like it, I'll give it to you. How about that? She looked up at him, her eyes full of hope as she tightened her grip on his arm. She couldn't stand the thought of him staying in the city, living in constant fear that he'd leave her or that Clara would find out. She had to find a way to keep him by her side forever. He loved property so much. Maybe an estate would be enough to lure him away. She had no idea her intentions were so transparent. An estate isn't necessary. Let's just focus on the press conference for now, Jason said, subtly trying to pull his arm free from her grip. The crazy look in her eyes was unnerving. Does she think I'm an idiot? Clara had already tried the whole trap him in a remote estate trick. He wasn't falling for it again. The mere mention of the word estate gave him a jolt of anxiety. This woman was not stable. He had to find a way to get away from her after the press conference. Meanwhile, At the venue for the press conference, Clara had arrived early and was sitting in a back room, her thoughts a tangled mess of Jason and Mr. G. She couldn't shake the suspicion. Why was this Mr. G so much like Jason? But the man's face, his features, the burn scars. It wasn't him. Her mind was in turmoil when the door behind her opened. Vivien walked in, dressed in stylish, casual athletic wear. Here it is, all the evidence of Julian Sue's crimes over the years. She wore a mask and a baseball cap, placing a small USB drive on the table next to Clara. Clara glanced at it, her eyes narrowing. You work fast. Wasn't he your adoptive brother for the past 5 years? She didn't know the whole story of the Sue family, so a healthy dose of suspicion was necessary. At the words adoptive brother, Vivien's eyes suddenly flashed with a raw, crimson fury. You must be joking, Miss Sterling. I've never had parents. And they don't deserve the title. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm. Clara's interest was piqued. Oh, and why is that? My sources tell me you were the one who left Jason to go abroad. So it seems, Miss Sterling, that you also believe I'm the kind of person who abandons people for personal gain? Vivien cut in, a pale, humorless smile touching her lips. She slowly pushed up the sleeve of her jacket. Underneath, her arm was a roadmap of faded, discolored pinpricks, a horrifying testament to countless needles. Clara's expression froze. What is that? What else could it be? The price of keeping the Sue family alive, Vivien said with a cold laugh. You probably know that the Sue's second daughter is a year younger than me. 5 years ago, she was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia. They came to the orphanage specifically to find a suitable donor, and I just happened to be a perfect match. She had never wanted to go abroad. She had never wanted to leave Jason. But those despicable people had threatened Jason's life and the life of the orphanage director. She'd been powerless to resist. My match was the best they could find, but the marrow transplant wasn't a complete success. Vivien's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. The second Miss Sue was frail, and her condition worsened. The intervals between stem cell and marrow extractions grew shorter and shorter. Eventually, desperate to save their precious daughter, the Sue family was no longer satisfied with just marrow. They started demanding my blood. For years, there had always been a fresh needle mark somewhere on her body. But all that physical pain was nothing compared to the moment she heard that Jason was dead. She had thought that if she just complied, they would leave Jason alone. She had thought she just needed a little more time to gather all the evidence she needed against the Sue family before she could go back to him. She had been one step too slow. The evidence on this drive includes chat logs of him ordering Evan Sterling to set Jason up, Vivien continued, her eyes cold. It might not be enough for a death sentence, but in a place like New York, once the NYPD takes Julian Sue into custody, I'm sure you have ways of getting him out of their hands and into mine. I hope you won't go back on your promise. I want to be the one to deal with Julian Sue. Her beautiful eyes were tinged with red. After all these years, the evidence she had painstakingly collected would finally be put to use. Outside the country, Julian had his family's protection. But now, with Clara's power and influence, he had nowhere to run. Done, Clara said, her expression shifting as she listened. She had always assumed Vivien had abandoned Jason for the Sue family's wealth. She never imagined this dark secret lay behind it all. Her attitude toward Vivien warmed considerably. At the same time, a sense of unease and regret settled in her heart. If Jason were still alive, if he knew all this, she knew his character. He would never have abandoned Vivien. Clara's hand drifted unconsciously to her stomach, but there were no ifs. He was gone. Ma'am, Miss Bianca is here, Ava said, rushing into the room. Why is she here? Clara frowned. She had originally tasked Ava with investigating the relationship between Bianca and Jason, but she had been too busy and distracted to follow up. She'd completely forgotten about Bianca. What was she doing here now? I don't know. She seems to be doing better. She said she was here for the press conference and isn't acting strangely, Ava reported, glancing at Vivien. Also, Julian Sue has arrived. Let her be. Just have a couple of people keep an eye on her, Clara said, rubbing her temples. She turned to Vivien. I have what I need. It's probably best you're not seen by Julian. I'm heading out front. You can watch from backstage. She stood and walked out. Vivien nodded and made her way to the conference's control room. Out in the main hall, Julian Sue was surrounded by a crowd of sycophants. Mr. Sue, so young and already so accomplished. We're so honored to have you here, Mr. Sue. Clara's father and cousin, Victor and Evan Sterling, were fawning over him, their flattery so excessive they looked like a pair of well-trained lapdogs. Jason, leading Brooke by the hand, slipped in unnoticed due to their simple attire. He immediately spotted the scene and rolled his eyes at Julian's smug expression. What a show-off. He's nothing without his daddy, just a wolf in sheep's clothing. Brooke muttered, tightening her grip on Jason's arm. Her voice, though low, carried, and heads immediately turned. Isn't that Miss Lynn? A few people whispered, exchanging strange looks. Wasn't Julian Sue the man her family had arranged for her to marry? So why was she clinging to another man's arm? And unless they were mistaken, that man was today's guest of honor. Mr. G. Brooke Lynn, ignoring her fiancé to hang on another man in public? That wasn't just a slap in the face. It was an open declaration of war. How could Julian possibly tolerate that? The guests looked back and forth, settling in for the drama. Julian's face cycled through shades of red and white. Evan looked guilty. He had, after all, tried to make a move on Brooke back at the university. But Brooke's next words drew all of Julian's attention. What? Who else would it be? Your mother. Get out of the way, she snapped, showing no deference at all. She shoved one of the men aside, found the best seats in the house, and pulled Jason down next to her. The crowd was too stunned to react. In a far corner, a small figure watched the scene unfold. Brooke Lynn. I didn't want to believe it, but you really did it. Bianca bit her lip so hard she could taste blood. Her eyes were red with fury, her nails digging into her palms. Seeing Brooke pressed up against a man who looked so much like Jason, she wanted to rush over and tear the woman to shreds. How dare she? Her brother had given his life for this woman, and now he was lying in the cold, hard ground while she was still here, living without a care in the world. She would avenge her brother. A manic gleam entered Bianca's eyes, but a glance at the bodyguards scattered around the room forced her to rein it in. Biting her lip, she turned and headed for the backstage area. She needed to plant something, connect to the conference's live feed, and monitor everything. She found the control room and, on her way, swiped a security guard's jacket, pulling it on. But when she got to the door, she found it locked. Frowning, she knocked. Who is it? Inside, Vivien, who had just dragged an unconscious guard into a corner, froze. Security, Bianca said, deepening her voice. I'm a new guy, here for shift change. Vivien paused, confused. Another shift change? Already? She pulled her mask up, walked to the door, and opened it. Bianca stepped inside and saw the woman's eyes under the bill of her cap, her slim figure. She paused. Your security here? Of course, Vivien said, equally surprised by Bianca's petite frame. This can't be right. They hired her as a security guard? Both women were suspicious. But Bianca quickly pulled a small bottle from her bag. Hi, I'm a new guard. Here, have a drink. Hi, I'm a new guard. Here, have a drink, Vivien said at the exact same time, holding out an identical bottle. The air went still for a few seconds. Both of them stared, their expressions frozen. This can't be right. How could they both have the same drink? This was a special sedative they had custom-made. Colorless, odorless, indistinguishable from a regular beverage. How is it commercially available? Actually, I'm not thirsty. You have it, little sis, Vivien said, already sensing something was wrong. Vivien knew something was off and tried to back out of the situation. But Bianca wasn't stupid. She sensed it too and quickly waved her hand. No, sister, I'm not thirsty either. You have it. She pushed the bottle toward Vivien. Vivien wouldn't take it. Hey, you're younger. You should have it. You drink it. No, you. After a moment of this ridiculous back and forth, they both understood. I don't think either of us is thirsty right now. Let's just get to work, Vivien said, withdrawing her hand. My thoughts exactly. Bianca nodded in immediate agreement. They sat next to each other, the air thick with awkwardness. Vivien reached for the remote controlling the main screen. She had figured it out. Someone from Clara's team had mentioned that Bianca Sterling, the one with albinism, had arrived. This had to be her. She didn't know what the girl was up to, but as long as she had the controller, nothing else mattered. Bianca, though unable to identify Vivien, didn't press the issue. She quietly locked the control room door from the inside and sat back down. Whoever this person was, it didn't matter, as long as she didn't interfere with her plans for Brooke Lynn. And so, the two of them sat in strange, silent accord, their eyes glued to the monitors. On the screen, the scene at the press conference was heating up. Brooke Lynn, that's enough. Julian, feeling the stares of the entire room, felt his face burning with humiliation. He couldn't take it anymore. His eyes, dark with menace, fixed on her. Brooke Lynn, I suggest you remember your place. If you want to break the engagement between the Lynn and Sue families, you'd better consider the consequences. His threat hung in the air, and the room fell silent. Only Jason frowned slightly. This pretentious jerk was at it again. He was about to ignore it, but Julian strode toward them. What do you want? Brooke's eyes flashed with alarm as she tightened her grip on Jason's arm, instinctively hoping he would protect her or at least say something in her defense. But then she remembered how disappointed he already was with her, and a chill went through her. What do I want? I'm taking my fiancé with me. Come here. Julian's face was a thundercloud as he grabbed her arm without another word. Let go of me. Brooke struggled, but she was no match for his strength. A triumphant smirk played on Julian's lips. Brooklyn, that Jason you were so fond of? I already took care of him. If you don't want this Mr. G to meet the same fate, you'll come with me quietly. As he spoke, his other hand started to move toward her waist. Brooke's face went deathly pale. It was you, she whispered, stunned. Of course. You didn't think Robert Miller had the guts to do it himself, did you? Julian gloated, not noticing the murderous look that flashed across Jason's face the moment he saw Julian's hand move toward Brooke. Julian Sue. Jason's voice was like a whip crack. Julian turned, startled, to see Jason's dark, furious expression. She told you to let go. Didn't you hear her? Before Julian could answer, Jason swung. A full-force punch connected squarely with Julian's face. Pfft. Julian spat out a mouthful of blood, cradling his cheek in disbelief. Do you have any idea what you're doing? G-Corp's standing in New York was nothing compared to the Lynn or Sterling families. This Mr. G actually dared to hit him. Did he want to throw his entire future away? A collective gasp went through the crowd. I'm hitting you. I've been waiting to do this for a long time, Jason said calmly, one hand in his pocket. He then slapped Julian across the other side of his face. The force of the blow sent stars dancing in Julian's vision. Brooke stood frozen, shocked by the turn of events. She had thought Jason wouldn't get involved, but he had stood up for her. She knew it. He did still love her. But Jason was far from finished. Julian Sue, you think your family runs New York? Let me tell you something. She said she doesn't want to marry you, and as long as I'm here, you won't use your power to force her. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a low hiss that only Julian could hear. And you think nobody has any proof of what you made Robert Miller do? Julian's face went dark. Who are you? He snarled. For a moment, looking through the mask into those eyes, he felt a flicker of recognition. It's you, Jason Miller. Julian was certain. He would never forget those eyes. You're alive? What did you do? A wave of panic washed over him. Jason glanced coldly at Evan and Victor Sterling. He was just about to activate the chip and have Sprite display the transaction records between Julian and the Sterlings when a large screen behind them suddenly flickered to life. A video began to play. Jason, I don't want him to get out of there alive. Let's sell the fake liquor for $600,000 a bottle. How many of the kids from the orphanage who matched with my sister are still alive? Society has to progress. Sometimes, people have to be sacrificed for a better future, don't they? The video was a montage of surveillance footage Jason had never seen before, all from the Sue family's estate in another country. The audio was sometimes muffled, but the content was damning, detailing a litany of crimes. The room, filled with the city's elite, fell into a dead, shocked silence. Is this something we're supposed to be seeing? The reporters, however, were ecstatic, cameras flashing wildly. Julian snapped out of his stupor. Stop filming. Turn it off. Stop it, he screamed, lunging at the reporters. But no one was going to listen to him when a story this huge had just dropped in their laps. Jason watched, bewildered. This wasn't the evidence he had prepared. This video was far more comprehensive, with footage he didn't have access to. What was going on? He frowned and looked up, his eyes landing on two female figures standing quietly in the distance. One was Clara, her expression as cold as ice. The other wore a mask and a baseball cap, her posture poised and cool. It only took him a second to recognize her. Vivien. Jason's heart lurched. His eyes, narrowed in thought, began to burn. Vivien, why was she here? And why was she with Clara? What had happened to the video he'd prepared? Where was Sprite? He pressed the chip behind his ear. Sprite's confused voice came through. Something's wrong, Jason. The control room door is locked from the inside. She was baffled. In the control room, Bianca was equally confused. The woman who had gone to the bathroom still hadn't come back. Had she figured something out? Bianca was worried, but watching the chaos unfold on the monitors, she had more pressing concerns. A team of NYPD officers was already entering the hall. Mr. Sue, you'll have to come with us. Without further ceremony, they snapped handcuffs on Julian's wrists. Victor and Evan Sterling were cuffed as well. You'll all pay for this, Julian snarled. Though furious, he knew he was at a disadvantage on foreign soil. He shot them all a venomous glare before being led away. Even then, he was confident he could turn this around. With the Sue family's power, he'd be out on bail in no time. This time, He had miscalculated. Once the car was out of sight, Clara turned to Vivien. My people will take him to the destination. How you deal with him is up to you. Thank you, Vivien nodded. She pulled the brim of her cap down low and fell in step behind the officers, a murderous glint in her eyes. She didn't notice that Bianca, in the control room, had seen the entire exchange. That woman, my aunt sent her. Bianca's eyes narrowed. She thought for a moment, grabbed the keys to the security car, and followed them. Clara gave Ava a subtle look, signaling her to proceed with the next phase of the plan. The NYPD officers now turned their attention to Brooke. Miss Lynn is Mr. Sue's fiancée. We'll need you to come with us as well. One of them gestured politely. Don't worry, it's just to get some information. We'll have you back as soon as we're done. Brooke was reluctant, but saw little choice. Babe, I'll just be a little while, she said, giving Jason a lingering hug before leaving with the officers. Besides, she wanted to make sure Julian stayed locked up for as long as possible. A few unfavorable statements should do the trick. Okay, Jason nodded, watching her go before heading back inside. On impulse, he walked over to Clara. Grand, Miss Sterling, was this your doing? He'd almost slipped up. Clara gave him a complicated look. What's the matter, Mr. G? Upset that I crashed your press conference? Of course not, Jason replied, a muscle twitching in his jaw. I was just wondering about the woman who was with you earlier. How do you know her? As far as he knew, the Sterlings and the Zus didn't move in the same circles. They shouldn't even know each other. And why would Vivien, who had gone abroad for the Sue family's money, suddenly turn on Julian? My, Mr. G. Quite the romantic, aren't you? Have you set your sights on her now, too? Clara's gaze was sharp, and she let out a short, dismissive scoff. I'd give up if I were you. Like me, she'll never love anyone else. Her cold words made the faint smile on Jason's face freeze. Never love anyone else. Does that mean she's already in love with someone? His heart began to pound, his own questions startling him. His mind was a chaotic whirl. Who did she love now? Could it still be him? Or had she met someone new? That doesn't seem to be any of your concern, does it, Mr. G? Clara's eyes grew colder as she watched the storm of emotions in his. I thought you were interested in Brooklyn, but I suppose I can tell you this. Julian, Sue won't be alive by morning. If Brooklyn survives, you might just get your chance to marry her. Jason's face changed. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. Clara's smile was chilling as she watched Vivien's group disappear from view. Julian Sue was responsible for my husband's death. I certainly can't let him live. As for Brooklyn, that will depend on what Vivien decides. Jason finally understood. Staring after the departing cars carrying Julian, Brooke, and now Vivien, the pieces clicked into place. Those two women, they were going to kill Julian. And maybe Brooke, too. Clara's motive was revenge for him. But what was Vivien's? He didn't have time to figure out. He was already running. Sprite, give me a car. Now. Brooke's life could be in danger. His death had been a ruse. If it ended up getting her killed for real, he knew that crazy woman's ghost would haunt his dreams forever. Jason, you. Sprite, who had just managed to get the control room door open, hesitated. But she found him a car anyway. She didn't get it. Hadn't Jason said he didn't like Brooklyn? Why was he so worried about her? Why had he stood up for her? Did he really not have feelings for her? On the stage, Clara watched Mr. G sprint out of the building, stunned. She had assumed his thing with Brooke was just a fling. Why did he seem so desperately concerned for her now? A wave of irritation washed over her. Ava, get my car. I'm going to see what's going on. She hung up the phone and strode out, her steps quick and determined. She would not let this Mr. G interfere with Julian's fate. As for Brooklyn, if he dared to protect her, then they could die together. Meanwhile, the NYPD car drove on, heading into a desolate suburban area. The sky was turning a dusky orange. The trees were stark and bare. Julian grew increasingly impatient. Are we there yet? Even the most remote precinct in the city should have been no more than a 15-minute drive. He peered out the window and saw something that sent a chill down his spine. Silhouetted against the setting sun, a dilapidated, old orphanage flashed past. A few minutes later, the car stopped. Julian's face was pale, ice crawling up his spine. He knew that orphanage. It was the one where Jason and Vivien had grown up. Where is this? Where are you taking me? He panicked, but the men in the car ignored his struggles, dragging him out by his handcuffs. He was standing on a rocky outcrop overlooking the sea, a few miles from the orphanage. The wind whipped around him, sharp and cold. A van was already parked nearby, and leaning against it was a woman in a baseball cap, a lollipop stick poking out her mouth. Her long, dark hair blew in the wind, making her look cool and languid. Ma'am, we brought him, the men said, shoving him forward and kicking the back of his knees. You, Julian cried out, as he collapsed onto the jagged rocks. He opened his mouth to curse them, but a soft, melodic voice drifted down from above. Well, Mr. Sue, have you forgotten me so quickly? Vivien's cool voice sent a shiver down Julian's spine. He slowly raised his head and met her gaze. Her beautiful, almond-shaped eyes were filled with a chilling, murderous intent. Vivien, it's you, he shouted, the realization dawning on him. The next second, a guard's boot slammed into his side. Watch your tone, the man growled, ready to kick him again until Vivien waved him off. That's enough. He's about to die. Let it be a little confused. Vivien crouched down, her eyes level with his, and finally allowed a smile to touch her lips. Julian, Sue, I told you that if you ever touched Jason, I would kill you with my own hands. You remember that, don't you? She held a small dagger, her other hand reaching up to remove her mask and hat. Her face, as pale and lovely as moonlight, was now a mask of pure coldness, like a viper that had been hiding in the shadows for years. Vivien, you're insane. What are you doing? Julian stared at her, his father's warnings echoing in his mind. For the first time, he felt true fear. Vivien seemed pleased by his reaction. What am I doing? You should know better than anyone. Years ago, you threatened me and forced me into the Sue family. You thought I forgot all that? Let me tell you something. From the very first day I set foot in your house, I wanted all of you dead. She playfully tapped his cheek with the flat of the dagger's blade, her thin lips curving into a breathtakingly beautiful arc. Do you know why your sister's illness kept relapsing? Do you know why your own body has been so weak? Why you've needed your mother's restorative tonics every day? As she spoke, the color drained from Julian's face. It was you, he whispered. It all made sense now. Vivien laughed. Actually, if you hadn't touched Jason, you probably would have had another year to live. But you touched the one person you never should have. She could endure anything. Humiliation, insults, even having her bone marrow extracted time and time again. She had been born with nothing, her status so low it was practically non-existent. She had no pride, only a deep-seated insecurity, and she had learned to hide her possessiveness, to use subtle means to get what she wanted. But Jason was her one and only red line. For the first time, Julian felt like he was truly seeing the woman in front of him. Vivien sheathed her dagger and gestured to her bodyguards. Don't worry, I won't make you walk this road alone. Bring the esteemed Miss Lynn, Mr. Sue's fiancé, over here. At her command, several bodyguards walked toward another car that had just pulled up. Inside, Brooke was frowning, looking out the window. She knew this wasn't the way to the police station. A bad feeling began to creep over her. Let me out. What are you doing? She demanded. The car stopped. The bodyguards exchanged odd looks. Our boss said that if you want to know about Jason's past, about who he used to be, you should come and meet her. Jason. The name made Brooke's frown deepen. Jason's past. For some reason, hearing those words made her heart ache. She had never forgotten that he had drunkenly called out Vivien's name once. She had never known about his past, and had never wanted to know who he had loved before her. But now, hearing the bodyguards talk about their boss, a sudden chill went through her. Fine, let's see what she wants. Brooke stared down the bodyguards and followed them out of the car. They started to bind her hands, but she violently shook them off. Don't touch me, she snarled. The sheer force of her presence, the aura of the sole heiress to the Lynn family fortune, made the two men flinch. They hesitated, but before they could say anything, Vivien's voice floated over. Don't tie her up. Miss Lynn has a temper. Let her walk over on her own. Vivien was leaning against the van again, a picture of aristocratic beauty. Brooke's gaze was immediately drawn to her. She saw a face that was strikingly similar to her own. The same almond-shaped eyes. But this woman's gaze held a gentleness that Brooke lacked. Her face was small and delicate, her skin translucent, her lips pale. Like a lotus flower in clear water, she was breathtakingly beautiful without a trace of makeup. In that second, Brooke's world froze. A deafening roar filled her ears. She stared at Vivien, feeling the blood drain from her body, a chilling cold seeping in her bones. Vivien, as if sensing her gaze, turned her head slightly, brushing a lock of dark hair from her face. She looked at Brooke with the eyes of a victor and offered a cool, detached smile. Miss Lynn, it's a pleasure. You really do look just like me. It was dusk, and the sunset was painting the sky in brilliant colors. But nothing was as beautiful as the woman standing before her. Brooke's eyes turned crimson. She clenched her fists, her body rigid. In that moment, all the mysteries, all the unanswered questions suddenly became terrifyingly clear. Why Jason had called out another woman's name when he was drunk. Why he had pursued her so relentlessly from the first day he saw her at the university. Why he had been so devoted, so single-minded. She understood. She understood everything. But she couldn't accept it. Who are you? After a long silence, the words were finally forced from between her teeth. Her nails dug so deep in her palms that blood began to trickle out. A short distance away, Bianca, who had followed Brooke's car, watched the scene unfold. She was too far to hear, but she could see clearly. The woman from the control room had Julian tied up and had just brought Brooke over. And when that woman turned her head, Bianca saw a face that was a mirror image of Brooke's. Bianca's eyes widened. She pulled out her phone, zoomed in, and took a picture. The photo confirmed it. The woman's face was undeniably similar to Brooke's. No, it was the other way around. Brooke looked like her. Bianca's mind reeled. She fumbled for the locket she had taken from the cemetery. The photo inside was damaged, but the girl with the innocent smile was not Brooke Lynn. It was Vivien. How? How can this be? Her hands, gripping the steering wheel, began to tremble. Her eyes were bloodshot. One Brooke Lynn was bad enough. But now this? The person her brother had truly loved. It was never Brooke. It was this woman. And from the looks of it, this woman had known her brother long before Brooke ever did. The revelation hit Bianca like a physical blow. Her face, already pale, twisted into a dark, contorted mask. Why? Why were there so many people around her brother? So, should she still kill Brooke Lynn? She hesitated. Meanwhile, hearing Brooke's question, Vivien's eyes glinted with cold amusement. Oh, I thought Jason would have told you about me. Since he didn't, let's make a formal introduction. Hello, my name is Vivien. I'm Jason's childhood sweetheart and his girlfriend. She smiled at Brooke, extending a hand. She bit down hard on the word girlfriend. Brooke's expression shifted from shock to a twisted rage. Shut up. Who the hell do you think you are? You have no right to call yourself his girlfriend. She refused to accept Vivien's existence, slapping her hand away, her emotions spiraling out of control. Vivien, however, remained unfazed. Miss Lynn, whether you accept it or not, I'm the one he never got over. You can see in your own face, can't you? If Jason didn't love me, he wouldn't have found someone like you to replace me. So, from beginning to end, I'm the only one he's ever loved. Every word was a dagger in Brooke's chest. A replacement? Was that all she was? A disposable substitute? Was everything he had ever done for her, all the kindness, all the affection, just because she was a stand-in for someone else? She finally broke. Stop talking. Stop it. Shut up. She screamed, her red-rimmed eyes showing the first signs of a manic episode. Vivien just watched her with a cold smile. Brooke Lynn stopped the act. You pretend to love Jason so much, but the moment he died, you ran off to find another man. Why do you think I brought you here? You don't really think I just wanted to tell you the truth, do you? Her smile grew colder. She was done playing games. Her deal with Clara was simple. She provided the evidence. Clara provided the targets. They had caused Jason's death. Now, they would pay with their lives. No, Jason wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that to me. Brooke mumbled, her eyes wild, her breathing ragged. Silent tears streamed down her face. The news had shattered her, but beneath the collapse was a twisted, agonizing pain. How could he do this to her? Did he think she was a fool? But she loved him so much. She should have locked him up from the beginning. Or they should have died together. Brooke clutched her head as the world around her seemed to melt into a series of distorted, leering faces, their voices a cacophony of whispers and taunts. It was like being trapped in a world of demons. But Vivien's voice cut through the noise. Brooke Lynn, I was forced to leave Jason. Now I'm back, and I will not tolerate you or Julian Sue. Her face hardened, and she gave a sharp nod to her bodyguards. They moved in and tied Brooke's hands. Don't hurt them, Vivien instructed. Tie them both up in the van, then drive it into the sea. Make it look like a suicide. The bodyguards dragged Julian, who was still struggling and shouting muffled protests, and Brooke, who was now lost in a daze, toward the van. He wouldn't. Jason wouldn't do this to me, Brooke chanted, her eyes filled with tears. As if by some instinct, she looked toward the coastline. At that exact moment, a car screeched to a halt. Jason leaped out, his eyes taking in the scene in an instant. Vivien and her bodyguards, Brooke and Julian being forced into the van. He knew immediately what she was planning. A clean, untraceable murder. Vivien, stop, he roared, sprinting toward them. Vivien, startled by his appearance, reacted instantly. Before he could get close, she grabbed Brooke, pulling her back and pressing the dagger to her throat. Don't come any closer, or I'll kill her right now. The blade nicked Brooke's skin, and a thin line of blood appeared. The sharp sting of pain seemed to pull Brooke back from the brink of madness. She looked at Jason, her expression a twisted mix of despair and bitter irony. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a dead, cold whisper. Her heart was numb. Her beautiful, vibrant face was now a tragic mask of tear-streaked makeup and a blood-reddened lip from biting it so hard. Her eyes, once so full of life, were now dull and gray, as if she had lost all will to live. "Jason, you lied to me. You never loved me. Not for a second. You are so cruel." She spoke in a low murmur, as much to herself as to him. Seeing her like this, Jason felt a sharp, unexpected pang of pain. She knew, and she was on the verge of a complete breakdown. He remembered the first time he'd met her, bright, confident, a woman who would never cry for anyone. He had been with her for over a year. He had watched her apologize again and again for her mistakes, watched her change herself for him in ways she never should have had to. How could he feel nothing for her? At the very least, he couldn't just stand by and watch Vivien kill her. "Vivien, what did you say to her?" Jason's face hardened, his cold gaze locking on Vivien. "Don't you know she has bipolar disorder? Jason's death had nothing to do with her. Let her go." But Vivien, mistaking him for Mr. G and interpreting Brooke's words as delirious ramblings, was not about to listen. Seeing Mr. G so fiercely defending Brooke, her expression darkened with contempt. "Mr. G, I know you were a benefactor to Jason's orphanage, so I don't want to kill you. But a friend of mine died because of her. So today, Brooke Lynn must die. Besides, what makes you think you have any right to tell me what to do?" Jason's brow furrowed. "A friend? You have other friends in New York." He let out a bitter laugh. "What right do I have? I know you've always been cold-hearted, Miss Sue, but I wonder if the small friendship we once shared, is it enough to convince you to let her go?" As he spoke, Jason raised a hand and coolly removed the mask. Then, under Vivien's stunned gaze, he began to peel away the layers of makeup and prosthetics. When the face beneath, so familiar, yet so foreign, was finally revealed, Vivien stumbled back a step. "You, Jason." The words caught in her throat, a painful, suffocating pressure building in her chest. She stood frozen, utterly transfixed. 5 years had passed. The brash, spirited boy she had known was now a man. The boyishness was gone, replaced by a mature, hardened edge. But she recognized him instantly. It was her Jason, the same Jason who used to follow her around like a puppy, promising that one day he would marry her. But now, the look in his eyes was that of a complete stranger. "Vivien, long time no see," he said, his voice quiet. Each word was like a drumbeat, hammering against her heart. Her cool, beautiful eyes slowly filled with red. "Jason, you're alive." She wanted to ask so much more, but he cut her off. "This whole thing, from beginning to end, was my plan. It had nothing to do with Brooke Lynn. I'm not dead. It was just a means to an end. I never thought you'd come back, Vivien. And I never thought you'd become like this." His gaze was a complex mixture of emotions. The Vivien he remembered from the orphanage had been the gentlest big sister. Now, she was trying to murder someone. Vivien was speechless. Disappointment flickered in Jason's eyes. "I don't want to dwell on the past. Brooke Lynn is innocent. You can't hurt her." His gaze shifted past Vivien to Brooke, who was still held captive in her arms. "Brooke, are you okay?" he asked, trying to reach her through the haze of her breakdown. But she just stared at him, silent and vacant. He couldn't help but feel a surge of remorse. "Brooke, what happened with Vivien? I'll explain everything later. Just come home with me, okay?" He took a step forward, reaching for her hand. The movement seemed to shatter the spell holding Vivien. The sight of him reaching for Brooke was like a physical blow. "Don't touch her!" she shrieked, tightening her grip on Brooke and the dagger. Her shock morphed into raw disbelief. "Jason, what are you explaining to her? You were hurt because of her, because she hijacked your wedding. And what did you just call her? How could this be happening?" She had thought he was only with Brooke because of her face, that she was just a substitute. But now, here she was, the real thing, standing right in front of him, and he wouldn't even look at her. She couldn't believe it. He couldn't have fallen for someone else. Had he truly given up on her completely? Vivien's eyes blazed with a crimson fury. She stumbled backward, pulling Brooke with her until they were teetering on the very edge of the rocky cliff. Jason's pupils contracted. "Vivien, don't do anything stupid." He didn't dare move closer. Seeing them one step away from falling into the churning sea below, his heart was in turmoil. "Vivien, have you forgotten the time we spent together at the orphanage? Even if you don't care about Brooke, do it for me. Don't be reckless. You could both get hurt. You have to dance, remember? If you injure your legs, your future is over." He tried to reason with her. At the mention of dancing, her wild eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Dancing? A bitter, beautiful, broken smile touched her lips. "Yes. I still have to dance. She still had to dance for him. Jason, are you worried about me? She asked, her gaze fixed on him, her voice a fragile whisper filled with a desperate, extreme longing. Jason, you still love me, right? She had stripped away all her pride, her voice trembling as she searched his face, the madness in her eyes impossible to conceal. He was worried about her. She knew it. Their 8 years together, growing up side by side. He couldn't have forgotten her. He still loved her, right? Her question silenced Jason. Love? What did you have left to love with? Yes, for those 8 years, he had loved her to his very bones, a love that had transformed into something as essential as family. But she had been the one to leave him. She had taken all his devotion and self-respect and ground it into the dirt. What was left to love? For the past 5 years, just forgetting her had taken everything he had. And now she wanted him to just pick it all back up? What did she think he was? He had to admit, seeing her again. It still stirred something in him, but it was a feeling he could control. He knew, with absolute clarity, that he could never love Vivien again. He would not make that mistake twice. Vivien, just calm down. Come down from there first, he said, avoiding her gaze. He didn't see the car in the distance. He didn't see Bianca, who had been watching the entire scene, her body trembling uncontrollably. Brother. He wasn't dead. He was alive. He was really alive. A wave of manic joy washed over Bianca, and she laughed, a wild, unhinged sound. But then she saw the look of deep affection in Vivien's eyes, and Jason's terror at the thought of them falling. And her joy curdled into despair. That woman, she was the one her brother had always loved. Now that she was back, would he still want her? No. He can't. They can't be near him. He's mine. He's all mine. They'll just steal his affection. I won't let them. I can't be the child my brother doesn't love. He's all I have in this world. No one can take him from me. Bianca's breathing grew ragged. On a pure, primal impulse, she slammed her foot on the accelerator. The car shot forward like an arrow released from a bow, hurtling straight toward Vivien and Brooke. Vivien, still reeling from Jason's evasive answer, didn't have time to react. She saw the car coming, her foot slipped, and she stumbled backward. The car missed them, but the jolt was enough to send them both over the edge. Brooke, losing her balance, tumbled from the cliff and plunged into the sea below. Jason! Vivien screamed as she fell. In that last second, Jason finally reacted. He didn't hesitate. He launched himself off the cliff, diving into the water after Brooke. He remembered from the last time they'd been in the river that she couldn't swim. In these violent coastal waters, she wouldn't stand chance. As for Vivien, he knew she was a strong swimmer.